The story begins with a boy waking up in a meadow chased by a horned rabbit. His name was Wataru Toyoumi, a 20-year-old average college student who loves anime and manga. The other day he had an all-you-can-eat drink at an izakaya with his friends and recalls singing karaoke until morning. Following that, he was walking home drunk and fell into the ocean. After falling into the ocean, he ended up being in the meadow, a fantasy world as he hoped. As far as he knew, horned rabbits often appear in light novels, so he guessed that there should be a status screen, which it was. He noticed that he had a message and tapped it. The message stated that he had fallen between the worlds and wandered into this world and he could not return to his world. The message also informed him that they gave him two unique skills: language understanding and ship summoning. Language understanding lets him understand all languages, both reading and writing. Summon ship skill was because he came from the sea and it seemed to fit his name. He lay down on the grass field while trying to process the fact that he was in a different world and couldn't go home. But then he decided to try out his ship summoning skill as it sounded so great. He clicked the described button and apparently he could purchase this and it kept the ship in optimal condition and allowed him to maneuver them freely. He could purchase a new ship from the shop menu. His first boat was a rowboat. He tried to summon the ship and it was a success. But as expected, it was just a normal boat and it was on the grass, so he started pushing the boat. Suddenly, two horned rabbits came and were about to attack him, but when he closed his eyes, nothing happened. He opened his eyes and looked at the floor and he saw the rabbits lying on the floor motionless. He wasn't sure if they were dead, but he was saved. He figured that it was the ship that protected him. The weather was getting worse, so he needed to find a village. Wataru didn't know if he could eat the rabbits, but he still took them with him. Judging by the violent rabbits, he concluded that this world might be dangerous. He started walking and arrived at the forest. It looked like monsters might show up, so he was quite scared. He wondered what kind of monster could have been other than the horned rabbits, and saw a goblin looking at him next to a tree. The goblin started chasing him and he ended up falling from a cliff. Thankfully, he wasn't seriously hurt, and the goblin disappeared. As he started looking around him, he noticed that there was a city. He was so relieved to see a city right in front of him and immediately went there. A soldier asked him for an ID. As he couldn't say he was from another world, he explained that he was attacked by a monster on his way and lost all of his luggage and asked how he could get inside. The soldier stated that he just needed to issue a provisional ID so he could stay in the city for 3 days, but he first needed to touch the appraisal crystal. He touched the crystal, and since he wasn't a criminal, the soldier let him pass. When Wataru went inside, he saw the crowded city. He was a little intimidated by everything, and he noticed non-human people, which proved that it really was a different world. He is curious about a lot of things, but he needs to do something first. The ID he got at the gate expires in 3 days, so he was told to register with the Adventurers Guild before it expired. He saw a building with a sword and shield in front, so he entered. There was a beautiful receptionist woman and a scary-looking old guy at the reception part. Wataru wanted to talk to the woman, but the line was too long and he was so tired, so he had to choose the old guy. He asked if he could register as an adventurer here, and the man stated that the registration fee was 1 silver coin. He didn't have any money, so he offered to give him 2 horned rabbits. The man said that it wasn't enough, but he could request a loan of a silver coin for the registration fee, but the repayment deadline was in a month. Since he didn't know how much a silver coin was in Japanese yen, he asked what he could do to earn silver coins. The man said that they buy those horned rabbits for at least 5 copper, and if he brings in as many as 20, it would pay about a silver coin. Wataru thought about the possibility of him catching 20 rabbits, and he wasn't sure, but he did not want to be kicked out of the city, so he had to accept it. The man told him to put his hand on the crystal and then gave him an F-ranked adventurer's card. He mentioned that from F to SSS, the more requests he fulfilled, the more he ranked up. He asked if he wanted anything he wanted to hide in his card, and explained to him that if he thought conceal while tracing, it would hide it. He decided to hide his last name and unique skills. The man reminded him to not forget about the horned rabbits and gave him a booklet to read. He then sold the horned rabbits for 7 copper apiece, and the guild attendant told him about a cheap place to stay, which was 10 copper a night. It was paced like sardines, but he was glad that he had a place to stay. He lay down on the uncomfortable floor and started reading the booklet. He was about to fall asleep, so he decided to imagine that the beautiful receptionist was explaining to him. First, the guild was not associated with any countries. The guild did not participate in the war, however. Each individual could accept the request to participate in a war. An adventurer could accept quests up to 1 level of difficulty above their rank. For adventures of rank C and higher, compulsory requests could be made in an emergency. You could also be nominated for a request. And then if you don't accept any requests for a certain period, your guild card will expire. Wataru was alright with guild stuff, but he wasn't sure if his skill was useful. He slept while thinking about that stuff and woke up at noon. He greeted the landlady and then went to wash his face. The toilet had a Japanese-styled pot, which he didn't like. He also wanted a towel or toothbrush as well. He bought bread and a rabbit skewer for 3 copper coins as breakfast and started walking around. There were so many people like elves and dwarves and beastmen. He went to a place where he could be alone and then summoned a ship. He tried to understand why those rabbits were defeated. Since he didn't have any money, he could rely on this skill. He noticed a man was running away from a horde of horned rabbits. Wataru immediately went inside the ship and surprisingly, the rabbits were dead before they reached him. He noticed that they were being deflected. He checked the status, and in the characteristics of the ship, it was written that the ship was unsinkable and indestructible. It was also written that nothing may board unless the captain's permission was given. He was so happy to have a cheat skill. The rabbits were on the floor trying to get in the boat, so he wondered if he could defeat them. He hit one of them and successfully defeated it. After hunting them all, he went to sell some of them. He hunted more, but he couldn't take them with him because he didn't have a big bag. He got 70 copper coins from 10 rabbits. He was glad that he properly earned money and he could stay in the inn again. He even got a corner this time. He checked the denial to the board properly, and apparently nothing may board unless the captain permits it. And if permission is revoked, person-object would be thrown overboard. If that someone tried to kill or attack on board, they would be thrown overboard. Being completely safe in the boat was amazing. If he had money, he could summon even better ships. He checked the other ships and liked the motorboat. He even had a luxury liner in the shop. He wondered what kind of ship it was, but didn't even think he could afford it for a lifetime. Now that he thinks about it, he wonders who gave him the ship summoning skill in the first message. He dedicated himself to doing his best tomorrow and hunting more rabbits. With that, his life in a different world started just like that. On his 5th day in another world, Wataru woke up and went to hunt rabbits again. Thanks to his cheat skill, he was able to hunt the rabbits without getting any harm. But the boat he has now was a little uncomfortable, so he decided to save enough money for the rubber raft. When he went to sell the rabbits he hunted that day, the man informed him that they could process 25 horned rabbits better now, and offered 8 copper per piece, which makes 2 silver coins in total. Wataru immediately accepted and wanted to buy the rubber raft, but then remembered that he owed 1 silver coin to the guild, so he went to pay them back. When he went to the guild, there was a different cute girl attendant. She asked for his guild card first. Wataru was a little excited to talk to the girl. He gave her the card and the silver coin. She said that she removed the debt of the silver coin from the guild card and told him to confirm. Wataru was surprised that they wrote things like debt on the card. She was confused because that should have been explained to him at the registration before. He said that he was given a booklet and told to read it. She seemed annoyed at the old man at the registration. The girl apologized and said that she was going to explain it now. This was his time to let his imagination run wild. She was already beautiful like that, but he imagined her as if they were on an ocean date with her bikinis. She explained that the guild card he had earlier had debts on it, but he could also deposit money. He could make deposits and withdrawals at both the Adventurers Guild and the Merchants Guild. She suggested he leave the large amounts of money with the guild because a lot of people carry the amount of money that they would normally use. The girl noticed that he wasn't listening to him. He was a little distracted because of the beauty of her. The girl then noticed that he hadn't accepted a quest yet. He said that he was hunting rabbits so he could accept any. She informed him that if he didn't fulfill a request once every month, his card would expire, and there were some things quests to supply horned rabbits. Wataru thanked her, and before he left, the girl stated that sometimes there were goblins and wolves outside the city, so she recommended the minimum amount of equipment just in case. Wataru thanked her and then went to the library to learn more about this world. He found a guide to the Latina Kingdom and started reading. In the center of the kingdom was the royal capital, and there were counts in each of the north, south, east, and west, that each governed their own city. The west count lived here in a western city, which seemed to be the center city in the west. The southern cities faced the sea and were connected to the royal capital by a large river. He wanted to go to the southern cities. He could use his boat summoning. The races that lived in this world were all common in fantasies: dwarves, elves, and beastmen like that fox-eared girl. He found a book called Introduction to Everyday Magic and wanted to look at that next time because he had to go shopping too. The next day arrived and he bought the Adventurer set. Today was his first time attempting a request. He checked the F-ranked requests like weddings, helping move, and finding a lost cat. The receptionist said he could accept E-rank requests as well, so he looked at them too. There were lots of goblin-related requests, which was a bit too much. He finally found a request about 8 horned rabbits in good condition, and the reward was 80 copper coins. He went to the receptionist and that fox-ear girl was there. He approached her and greeted them. With a smile on her face, she commented that he looked like a proper adventurer now. Wataru thanked her and gave her the request he wanted to take. She accepted his request and wished him the best. Wataru was amazed by how kind she was, and he felt so excited about his first request. He hunted 10 horned rabbits. The request was 8, so he already had enough, but he decided to hunt a little more. While he was waiting for the 11th rabbit, a goblin came. While he was panicking, the goblin couldn't reach him thanks to the denial to board. However, he was still scared because of how close the goblin was. He was worried about the resistance of the barrier, but the goblin saw something and left there. The moment it left, Wataru returned the ship and started walking towards the city. Halfway to the city, he realized that he didn't have the rabbits. The worst thing was that he left them on the ship before returning the ship. He started to freak out about what to do because he didn't know where his boat would go, and he can't hunt new rabbits because of the goblin. He remembered what the receptionist girl said and started walking toward the forest again. He eventually summoned the ship and then saw the rabbits he hunted inside the ship. He embraced the rabbits and brought them to the Adventurers Guild. The fox-eared girl checked the rabbits and they were all good quality. That was the first time he had completed a request, so she congratulated him. The woman next to her and the man in there also congratulated him, and he was just glad that he had done his best. He now knew that requested horned rabbits sell for more, and when he returned to the ship, his stuff stayed intact. From now on, he didn't have to carry anything, and there were likely to be other uses. In the following days, he picked every request he could and managed to save up 2 silver coins and 40 copper coins, and now he could afford the rubber raft. He opened the ship purchase screen and inserted the coins. With that, the rubber raft appeared in front of him. It was so large, and he could even put stuff in there like a blanket and a table for a break. While he was enjoying his new boat, a man was watching him from a crystal and decided to take action. In the next chapter, Wataru visits the doctor. It had been already a month since he came to this world and he went to the clinic. The reason was that when he was a child, he couldn't learn life magic because he was from a different world. But he didn't mention that part, of course, and when he consulted with the guild, they told him to come here. The doctor said that she was going to circulate some magic through his body for around 5 minutes to see if he could use it. The medical fee for this procedure was 10 copper coins. Magic exists in this world, and among the various types of magic, everyday magic is a simple type that almost all people could use. Apparently, you could do things like creating sparks, releasing a small amount of water, or causing some wind. On the status card, he was written that he had magical powers too, so he should be able to use them. The doctor injected the magic into his body by holding his hand and asked if he felt the magic flow through him. Holding hands with a beautiful female doctor made him a little thrilled, so he was nervous. He felt a warm power extending from the doctor's hand through his body. He told her that there was a think magic on the side of her magic. The doctor asked if he had a little magical power, and he responded that his magic stat was 18, and asked if she could use life magic with that amount. The doctor said that life magic could be used well enough, and the next thing was to focus on gathering magic at his fingertips. He tried to focus and gather it at his fingertips, but since he didn't know what to do, the doctor instructed him on his back. She made him draw a circle and then a flame bursted from the tip of his finger. The doctor mentioned that it would be a good idea to practice. He thanked her and she informed him that there was a church right there and that if he prayed to God he might get better quickly. He went outside and looked at the church and wondered what kind of God existed in this world, and then thought about the person who gave him the message and the skills at the beginning. He decided to pray it next time as he was getting late with his work. He went to the Adventurers Guild and looked at the request board. There were even 5 requests for delivery of horned rabbits. All of them were 8 to 10 horned rabbits, so he thought he could achieve about 2 requests with plenty of time remaining. He brought the 2 of them and went to the receptionist woman. He mentioned that the number of requests for horned rabbits was increasing, and the woman responded that more restaurants come to buy horned rabbits these days, thanks to his delivery of high-quality horned rabbits all the time. While they were talking, a woman was talking to a man wondering if she could get the horned rabbits today. The man responded that he just put out a request, but other restaurants were also after good quality rabbits. He wanted to sell the roasted horned rabbit that he was so proud of. Roasted horned rabbits seemed to get Wataru's interest, and he asked the man if they were a cook. He said that he had been selling horned rabbits to the guild lately, and if they like, he offered to hunt for them. They were so happy to hear that. Wataru asked for something in exchange and then went to the forest to hunt some rabbits. He was dedicated to doing his best to hunt them as there were a lot of people who wanted horned rabbits. He summoned his ship and it had a gazebo. A while ago, he asked a carpenter to build a gazebo and now he could hunt while relaxing, and all that was left was to buy a stove and have some tea. Today's harvest was 55 horned rabbits, which was a new record. In the end, he was able to complete all 5 requests, so he earned 5 silver coins and 36 copper coins. After work, he went to the place of that man and woman who were making roasted rabbit. The woman was waiting for him and thanked him for the horned rabbit today. She told him to take a seat while she prepared. Wataru had never been to a restaurant since he came to this world, and he was looking forward to having a good meal. He looked around and saw people who looked like adventurers. The waiter brought his meal and it looked pretty delicious. Its skin was crispy and the smell of herbs was mouth-watering. As expected, the taste was amazing. The cook asked what he was thinking and he stated that it was very delicious and he was impressed that the horned rabbits he hunted became such a splendid dish. They were glad that he liked it, and the woman stated that it was all thanks to the praying at the church yesterday. This made him wonder if everyone went there. The next day, the receptionist girl noticed that he had been making requests every day lately, and suggested he take a break once in a while, like going to church to pray. She said that the churches in this city were very beautiful and tourist attractions. The more people insisted he go to the church, the more he found it strange that they kept telling him about it. This was completely the working of some power, as he thought. He was actually a little afraid he was being called by something, but he wanted to thank for his skills, so he decided to go. When he went inside the church, he noticed that the atmosphere was a lot different from outside, and he saw a big statue of a man who looked divine and strong. He kneeled like the others and started to pray. He thanked him for the skills and the message he gave him, and then heard a voice saying, "You are welcome." When he opened his eyes, he was not in the church, and someone was telling him about the great skill he gave him. He said that denial to board would even repel a dragon's breath, and if he stepped on the magic circle when summoning, he could stand on the surface of the water. He then asked why he was not adventuring. He also told him that it was time he showed up. Wataru was speechless. He couldn't even process where he was right now, who he was talking to, and what this man was saying. The boy on the throne stated that this was the god's world. Wataru asked if he was a god, and he confirmed him. He said that he was the creator of this world. Wataru couldn't believe this boy was a god. The boy then told him that it was hard to get him here, so he should be a strong believer. Wataru was so confused and just thanked him for his skills. The god then asked if he knew why he was called into the god world. When Wataru asked the reason, he said that it was because his actions were boring. He had been watching him all this time with that crystal, but he was only hunting horned rabbits. Even the other gods were complaining about this. Since he was from a different world, there were a lot of gods who were looking forward to it because otherworlders tend to take unpredictable actions. But when it comes to him, it's mediocre and sad, so they get bored. He mentioned that the god of pleasure wanted to throw up because of how boring Wataru was. Wataru couldn't believe he was in a world where gods were dissing him. The god then continued, stating that if they gave a powerful skill to the otherworld people, they all would become heroes, villains, or monarchs who do whatever they wanted to. They gave him a weak skill. Wataru didn't think revealing his identity would be a good idea, but the god said that he didn't want him to reveal that. But most people use their skills way more often in order to influence this world little by little. That was what they were expecting, not going after the horned rabbits for a silver coin. He said that if he bought the luxury liner, he would be able to eat the food of his world. Wataru seemed interested and asked if he could eat rice. The god confirmed, saying that he could use shops of his world in the luxury liner. There were top-notch restaurants, and he could watch movies and DVDs. Wataru was taken aback by the possibility of him having a pretty civilized life. The god said that he couldn't use things like TV or the internet, but still, the unique skills he had given him were amazing. Wataru was motivated and promised to do his best. After wishing him the best, the god sends him back to the world. With that, he had a big goal for his life in the other world. In the next scene, Wataru is looking at the luxury liner. Buying this ship was pretty hard as it cost 500 platinum coins. In Japan, that was 500 billion yen. It was indeed a lot of money. He had got to be an adventurer, a rough earner, or a merchant, or he would go to get there. Fortunately, Shio summoning was a cheat skill. When you thought about what God taught him in the God world, was that when he was in the magic circle when summoning the ships, he would be in the desired position on board. While the ships were being repatriated, time was stopped for the items on board, and if he bought a new ship, the level of ship summoning skill would increase. As he leveled up, he managed to make his ship stand out in a different world. In terms of ability, it was probably suited for trading. Either way, if he was going to use a ship, he would like to go to the southern city on the coast. He decided to search for a route to get there. He went to the Adventurers Guild and asked the receptionist girl. She said that she knew the general direction, but if he went to the southern city, that meant he would not be able to deliver horned rabbits, which seemed to upset her. Wataru felt bad for making her sad, but her mood switched quickly, and she started explaining. To get to the southern city, he first needs to head to the royal capital. It was common to go south on the road from there or down the river by boat. There was also a river between the western city and the royal capital, and it flowed to the southern city. But this river was not maintained, so it takes about 10 days. Traveling on any route was dangerous. He needed a night watch, so she recommended organizing a party. Wataru didn't think about it because it would be sad if he just stayed in the gazebo raft. He thanked her. He always thought how kind this girl was, but couldn't even ask her name as he didn't have the guts to talk to a beautiful girl like her. When he was about to leave, he imagined the girl asking him out, but no way would happen. While he was thinking that, someone did touch his shoulder and called him. When he looked back, two scary-looking men were in front of him and asked him to come with them. He tried to refuse them as he was sure they would kill him. but they told him that it would take a second and dragged him to the restaurant. Surprisingly, those men just wanted to join him to hunt the horned rabbits and beg him. As Wataru was confused, they explained that they were adventurers and wanted to buy new equipment. He seemed to make a lot of money, so they were interested. They also stated that if he said no, they would give up. Wataru was relieved that they weren't bad people and said that he was fine with tea. He said that there were so many rabbits that he couldn't do them all anyway. The man who did the talk introduced himself, and his name was Aldo. Aldo offered to pay for his meal while he explained how to hunt horned rabbits. He sat with them, and while eating he talked and talked. He also mentioned that he was starting a journey soon, and if they were traveling it was better to have a part like them. Aldo agreed with him and said that if he was always alone, he might want to work as a bodyguard for a merchant. Solos don't get paid if they are below D rank, but it was better than traveling alone. That was an option for Wataru. Aldo mentioned that if he can't defeat something like a goblin, he could not be an escort. The next day, he started preparing for his trip while earning money by hunting horned rabbits. He trained with bows and spears at the guild, and little by little he piled up food on the raft. And today he was going with Aldo to defeat some goblins. Aldo said that if there was a goblin, he was going to leave one for him. While walking in the forest, Wataru was so nervous. They encounter a slime first. Aldo explained that they were the forest cleaners. They digest and clean up the corpses of monsters. He asked if he could touch it, and Aldo warned him to touch it a little bit because if he touched it for a long time it would capture him. The slime was so soft and jiggly. Wataru was so amazed by this slime that he wanted to keep it. Aldo told him to calm down and asked if he had a tamer skill because if he hadn't, he couldn't enter the city with that slime. He eventually apologized for carrying away and they continued their jobs. Goblins started coming towards them. They all started to take down the goblins and Aldo left one for Wataru. He successfully slashed it and with a hit on its throat, Wataru managed to defeat his first goblin. All that was left to collect the goblin's magic stones need its heart and right ear. Wataru was so grossed out by the monsters that he couldn't even listen to what Aldo was saying. He was sure that he was not suited for an adventure job. They went back to the city and celebrated his first goblin hunt. Aldo asked when he was leaving and he responded that he was planning to leave in a week. Also offered to see him off because thanks to his teaching them how to hunt horned rabbits, their rewards tripled. Wataru then left the restaurant and went to the Adventurers Guild to say goodbye and thank the Foxier girl. He was imagining that she would cry and beg him to not go, but he already knew that would be impossible. When he went inside, the line for the Foxier girl was too long and the old man was there sitting. He was also calling him over. The old man heard about his trip and stated that thanks to him there were more adventurers hunting horned rabbits. The horned rabbit requests were really low and weren't really taken until now. But the rumor went around that you could earn money quickly so the newcomers were able to buy equipment properly, and the number of injuries decreased. The receptionist's staff was happy about this. Wataru wanted to hear this from the Foxier girl. When the day of the trip arrived, he said goodbye to everyone he knew and started his journey. He found a river, and it was time to finally float the boat on the surface of the water, not the ground. He recalled what the god boy said, so he got on the magic circle when the ship was summoning, and he could stay on the water surface for a second. The ship was here, and now it was time to set sail for the southern city. He sailed until the sky got dark and he thought about landing somewhere. He saw some scary-looking people and was afraid of getting attacked, so he decided to go further down the river. While going, he saw another bonfire and there was a girl. He thought about what to do and then decided to call the girl from the boat. The girl turned to him and before he knew it, 4 beautiful but armed women were looking at him and asking who he was. Wataru explained that he was just an adventurer and suggested they leave because there were some bandits upstream. The one who pulled her seemed to like this warning and told the other woman named Marina to do some scouting. Wataru decided to go, but she stopped him saying he had to stay there until they were done. He tried to explain that there were some bad guys in the immediate vicinity so he would like to get away from there. But she said that he could be trying to trap them with those guys. Wataru gave up and stopped talking. They were all amazingly beautiful and their equipment was like an adventurer's. Those kinds of beautiful parties were only present in stories. He imagined teaming up with them. He was about to dive into his dream world again but stopped himself before getting caught up in the trouble. Marina came back and confirmed his information. The woman then apologized for having mistaken him and thanked him. Wataru told her to not worry about it and he was sure she wouldn't have a problem even if he hadn't taken his warning. She seemed surprised because the information he gave was pretty useful. She said that there was a bounty on those bandits and they would get the reward. Before they left, she wanted him to let her reward him if they ever met again. Wataru missed his chance to get along better with them, but he didn't want to stand out, so it can't be helped. A few days later, he finally saw the southern city. There were a lot of boats and they were all made of wood. He saw a self-propelled boat and wondered if it moved with magic. He had saved up a lot of money and it would be convenient if he had a motorboat. He decided to repatriate the ship somewhere and head to the city by land. He walked around the city and he was amazed by the atmosphere. While buying some fish, he asked the sellerman if he knew where the commercial guild was, and the man responded that it was in the direction of the harbor. He asked if he was a merchant and said that he was thinking of starting a business. It was time to change to a merchant in order to get the luxury cruise ship. He arrived at the commercial guild and there were a lot of well-dressed people. A fox-eared girl greeted him and asked what her business was there. After getting rid of his excitement about the girl, Wataru stated that he had many things to ask her and wondered if that would be okay. The girl told him that it was fine, and he felt weak against her. His first question was if he could join the commercial guild even though he was a member of the adventurers guild, and the receptionist said that it was possible. The lowest F rank was a peddler registration, and he could join with an annual membership fee of 5 silver coins. He mentioned that he had a chance to get a ship and asked if there was work he could do. She said that the contents vary depending on what kind of ship it was. He said that it was a small magic ship, but getting a ship was not that easy. When she claimed that he had good connections, Wataru couldn't say anything as his connection was a god. She started to explain the workings of the magic ship. For the magical ship, most jobs were to carry people to cities like the royal capital. The rest depends on the ability of the magic ship. If he could carry adventurers to the southeastern island, the rewards would be very good. This island was home to rare herbs and strong monsters. He could get valuable materials, but there was a lot of shallow water and rocks, and there was no route through, so only small boats could pass. On top of that, there was a fast current. At the moment, only 4 ships were able to travel there. He asked how much he would get paid if he got to the island, and it was 20 silver coins per passenger per day. That would mean 50 silver coins in a day if he put 5 people. The receptionist said it depended on how expensive the island's materials were. Wataru said he would join the commercial guild. The receptionist asked him if he thought about the mooring space for the ship. She said she could lend one for 1 silver a month, which made 6 silver in total. She said she would merge it with the Adventure Guild card, so she requested to take his card. Wataru gave it to her and the integration was completed and the mooring space was number 115. He said his name was Wataru and thanked her, then she said her name was Camille. Camille said she was looking forward to working with him. Wataru left there on his way, thinking that he was glad he introduced himself because he could learn her name. When he arrived at the Gull's Inn, he wondered if there was a room available. Then he went in and rented a room with a single bed. He could also see the sea. He was paying 50 copper per night, with breakfast and hot water to wash himself. He thought it was a little expensive, but it was satisfying enough. He said he would buy a motorboat tomorrow and try going to the southeast island. The next day, he found the motorboat that he needed, but he was worried that it was not made of wood. He decided to take his chance there and purchased it. The level of ship summoning was going up and there were some new abilities too. He decided that the boat felt like a boat, unlike any other boat he had ever seen. But at that rate, everyone would know he was from another world. So with the new skill of ship disguise, he could change the appearance of the ship as he wanted by reproducing the texture, without changing the texture, without changing the performance. It was amazing for him to have a completely wooden ship. For some reason, he also knew how to steer it, so it was really a cheat. He also knew how to get to the island. It took about 8 hours to get to the southeastern island, and it was going to take 1 day if he counted the break. Time passed quickly and he arrived on the island. He realized that it had been less than 5 hours. Then a man on a boat approached him and told him that he hadn't seen him around before. He immediately greeted him, told him his name, then he said he had gotten a ship and he had been introduced to that island by the commercial guild. The man, whose name was Guido, said it was nice to meet him. Guido said more ships would be nice as he said he was getting a lot of requests, so was very busy. Wataru said he looked forward to working with him and asked if there was anything he needed to take care of in that job or anything he needed to know. Guido told him that once an adventurer entered an island, they did not come back for a few days. However, he said, if they got seriously injured, they might have had to return to the city suddenly. He also said that was why they always had to stay there. Wataru was okay with everything, then he ran to go buy some stuff for the boat and something to do at the island as they were safely on the South Island. Wataru changed some clothes, tableware, iron pot, and bought too many things. However, he could make a lot of money with that. He thought he would be able to buy another ship pretty soon. Meanwhile, a man with a knife, wearing his hoodie and not showing his face, approached Wataru and tried to stab him but couldn't manage it. He was shocked and tried to know why he tried to do such a thing. The man asked if the boat belonged to him. He was afraid that he was after the boat, so tried to run away, but someone held Wataru from the back and hid him. The hoodie man lost Wataru. It was Camille who saved Wataru from being killed by that man. She asked if he was okay and told him that was the back door of the guild. Wataru told her that he'd just come back from the southeast island and was shopping, but suddenly the man tried to stab him. Camille asked him if he made it to the island, then told him, as she mentioned yesterday, a ship that could go to the island was very valuable, so many people would want it. It meant he was being targeted. He asked what to do. He asked if he had to run to another town and asked if Guido was a good person. She said other employees guarded or bought slaves that helped them. He was very upset to learn that there were slaves and stuff in that world. However, he thought they were really expensive. When the guildmaster burst into the room, told them that he heard the story and to leave it to him. He said he would take care of it. The guildmaster told Wataru that he would be out of town for a while and that he needed Wataru to go do a commission on Southeast Island. In the meantime, he would find an escort for Wataru. He warned Wataru that a ship that could go to the island was a treasure for the guild, and he would support him as he could. He hoped that Wataru would stay there that night. Wataru had no choice but to say yes. The next morning, Camille came to check if Wataru slept well. The guild would provide the food to the island this time, and they would meet the adventurers who were going to the island on his ship. He thought yesterday evening he was thinking he was going to make a fortune, but now there was a complete life-threatening change. When they arrived at the harbor, they saw the adventurer team was already there. They finally departed for Southeast Island, and Wataru was excited for his first job. The adventurer part Girasola leader Alicia asked if he was the guy they met at the riverside the other day, and vice leader Dorothea was almost sure he told them about the bandits. Irma and Kara were also in their own bubble. Maria the scout was silent, while priest Claretta was thanking him for what he had done for them and asked him out for dinner. The other girls seemed to like that idea and wanted to treat him to something. Wataru was just in denial that he really got to see this beautiful party again and wanted to get to know them. However, he was scared that their fans would kill them if he had dinner with those beautiful ladies, so he tried to refuse them by saying he had got a lot of things to do, including hiring an escort when he got settled and the time seemed right. Then they could maybe have dinner. The girls seemed to have an understanding approach to his trash excuse. Wataru was relieved that he successfully postponed the dinner and started worrying about the escort, but it was the first time he ever had anyone other than himself on his ship, and he almost invoked denial to board. In the future, he wanted to remember to permit everyone to board the ship one by one. As the island came into view, Wataru warned everyone to be careful as the shaking was about to get worse. The girls held tight until they arrived at the coast and were relieved. Alicia thanked Wataru and suggested getting ready to go into the woods. They helped each other get off the board. There was lots of baggage. Dorothea found the boat so fast and Claretta agreed and added that there wasn't much shaking, which was great. Wataru told them that he was going to make some tea and asked if they wanted to take a break before leaving. Irma said she was flattered. Wataru thought she was so sexy. After they drank the tea, they left and said they would be back in 5 days. After they left, Mr. Guido came with 2 men and introduced them to Wataru. One's name was Carlo and the other one was Daniel. Wataru said he looked forward to working with them. Guido told Wataru that he was so lucky that his first job was with Girasole. They were A-ranked adventurers and powerful at it too, and on top of that, they were gorgeous. Guido said he got nervous when he worked with Girasole. Wataru said this really looked like a fan club. Wataru, as he saw Guido, wanted to tell him that he needed to hire an escort as he got into some danger with his magic ship. Guido said it happened to him too. Carlo said he had been targeted by some dangerous people and he had been almost tricked. Guido told Wataru to listen to him and told him not to be stingy with the escorts. Besides, he said, all requests must have gone through the commercial guild. He told him if he took requests privately, there would be people who would try to trap him or make trouble for him. Wataru told them that he was free for the next 5 days and that he would use some chicken bones that he got for free when he was shopping. He was going to try to make chicken soup. He had only seen it being made on TV once, so he didn't know if he could do it. He followed every step he remembered and used everyday magic, which was really convenient. Guido was watching him talking to himself while cooking and he thought what a strange guy he was. When Wataru was done, he searched for a slime near the beach and found one. He put it on his knee and started to think he still didn't know how to acquire the taming skill that allowed him to talk to monsters. He just wanted to play with the slime. Thus, his first day on the island ended. The second, third, and fourth days passed peacefully. The sea was calm and he wondered if he could build a cottage on the water and make it float with a skill. On the 5th day, he was ready to go when Girasole arrived. Just at that moment, they came back. Kara, one of the girls who came with great chaos, had a huge monster on her back. Girls were trying to carry it studiously. Wataru was shocked and told them he would help them. They all looked so tired. Alicia said it was a subspecies of saber tiger and the count wanted to have it stuffed. Wataru gave everyone oshibori. They asked what to do with that. He explained that an oshibori is a cloth dipped in hot water and it felt good to wipe their hands and face with it. Alicia said she had been bathing in water, but wiping herself down with a hot cloth felt refreshing. Wataru also prepared food for them and they were happy to have some. He said he was experimenting with that soup for 5 days and he was really proud of it. They found it really delicious. Claretta said even though the ingredients in it were vegetables, she could taste the chicken. Then she wanted a recipe from Wataru. He said it would just take a while, he made it to pass the time. Everyone praised Wataru with a smile and he was glad he made it. Then they all were going back to the city, and when they arrived, a little boy saw them with a saber tiger and he seemed excited. There were a lot of people who approached them with great excitement and curiosity. They were all trying to understand where and how they brought the saber tiger. Wataru thought he would keep a low profile. However, it was obviously a way too outstanding way to enter the port, and so his first job as a merchant was successfully completed. The next chapter starts with a man introducing himself to Wataru. Wataru's magic ship was exposed. The man said his name was Zabo and he was a merchant. He told Wataru that he heard Wataru had a wonderful magic ship. He asked if he would be interested in signing an exclusive contract with him. Wataru didn't want it and told him that all his work went through the guild and asked him to leave. One by one, people came into Wataru's inn, offered him jobs, and tried to persuade him to work together. After Zabo, a man with a trading company came, then a woman offered to double the guild's payment. But Wataru did not want that either. Wataru now had 2 escorts and asked them how long that solicitation would last. Dino, one of the escorts, told Wataru that he stood out because of the saber tiger, so it was going to take a while. Enrico, the other escort, said the merchants would not give up so easily. Wataru thought the saber tiger was a mistake. It seemed that only Wataru's ship could carry a demon of that size off the island. From then on, merchants repeatedly came into his inn. Thanks to the escorts, he had been able to get out and all, but it was safer on the island and they could earn more money. He couldn't wait to get to work. Wataru went to a place, saw a man, and told him that Camille from the guild told him to go there. He asked the master of the building there. The man said his name was Danino and told him he was the master of the building. Then he asked Wataru what he wanted. After introducing himself, Wataru said he wanted a big strong raft and asked if he could make one for him. He said he would like one that was disassembled so he could carry it and then assemble it at his destination. He was holding a paper and showed it to Danino and told him that the size he wanted was about that big. Danino told him he would do it for 70 silver pieces. Wataru wanted him to make a wooden tub too. He thought that was quite a bit, but he was introduced by Camille, so he wasn't getting ripped off. 3 days later, everything Wataru wanted was ready. Danino told him that he could assemble the raft by connecting the same numbers. Wataru thanked him and wondered if he could pull it because it looked really heavy. Meanwhile, the girls Girasole came into Danino's place. Wataru told them he was glad to work with everyone from Girasole again. They said it was their pleasure to work with him. They hoped he didn't mind if they chose his ship and told him that it must have been hard for him after what happened. Wataru told them he would get by somehow. Wataru told his escorts Dino and Enrico he would be back in 5 days, thanked them again, and left. Claretta told Wataru the other day when he taught her how to make bird bone soup. She tried it and it turned out delicious. The kelp soup stock he gave her was also amazing, as Claretta said. Wataru was glad to hear that and said he would dry some more kelp again at the island and wanted her to take however much she needed. By the way, said Dorothea, asked Wataru what was with that wood in the boat. He said he thought he would make something good to float in the bay on the island. As he said something good, girls understood that it was still a secret as he might have failed. They all seemed excited about that. Wataru thought he could not mess up anymore. Then the girls were off. After the Girasole left, Wataru started to get to work when Guido arrived. He asked what he was going to do with that wood. Wataru said he was thinking of floating a raft there. Guido asked if he was going to assemble it now and told him since he was there he could help him. Wataru was so happy to hear that, and then they immediately started to build a raft. Wataru thought putting together a raft was like solving a big puzzle, but still, such a big piece of wood was hard. He thought he wasn't able to lift that when he was in Japan. Since he came into that world, his level had been steadily increasing. Now he was at 20. It looked like it had given him strength and stamina. It seemed he was gaining levels without knowing it. When the work was done, Wataru took a look at it and realized he had made an amazing thing. He finished the bath raft. He may have spent a lot of money, but he was Japanese, so he couldn't compromise on the bath. He looked at the distance from the island and it seemed enough. Now in the bathtub filled with water by everyday magic, he threw a hot baked stone. He did that a few more times and now the temperature was perfect. Wataru took off his clothes and started taking his first bath with the beautiful ocean view. On that day, he took a very long bath, and when Alicia and the other girls were back, they said that they got a lot of good material, so they left early. Besides, they were curious to see Wataru's secret raft. Wataru was excited to show them. When he brought them to the raft, the girls were all shocked because they thought only aristocrats and wealthy merchants had a bath. Wataru was surprised and kind of interested to see them experiencing their first bath. When Alicia asked who would like to go first, Kara and Claretta were scared, so they didn't want to. That was an unexpected reaction. Wataru told them to call him if anything happened and left there. They took off their clothes and washed their skin first, just as Wataru said. Alicia was the first one to get in, and she seemed to love it. Wataru heard their happy voices from the island, and this made him happy too. Kara and Claretta seemed worried and asked him if bath felt this good. He said that there might be some people who don't like it, but he thinks that not taking a bath would be a big loss in life. He said that it feels good just to put your feet in so they could take it easy. Alicia informed him that they were done taking their bath. So Wataru asked if they were going to try it out too, and they accepted. First things first, they put only one foot in. 30 minutes later, they were done with their bath and were talking about how good it was. Alicia didn't even feel tired. While they were happily talking about how amazing the bath was, Wataru watched them admiring. And while he was staying happily on the island, the situation in the city was not good. Camille came to the guildmaster in panic and informed him that Wataru had been accused of theft. In the next scene, Wataru and the others are returning from the island. Wataru congratulated everyone, and Dorothea stated that they had gotten a lot of good stuff this time too. Alicia decided to accompany him to the guild. They started walking, and seeing a man walking with gorgeous women seemed interesting to the townspeople. He was sure Girasoli fans would be out for him after this walk. They arrived at the guild, and Wataru thanked them for accompanying him. Alicia told him to let them know if he needed anything, whether it be a hot bath or a good meal. Everyone really seemed to like the bath. They were happy with it, and he was pleased to see beautiful women happy. The finished raft seemed quite sturdy, so he thought about testing it to see if it could be slept on. He just needs to add a tent, and then it could be called glamping. Suddenly, Camille came into a panic and told him that they had a problem. Before she could explain to him what the problem was, a bunch of men came and stated that he had been arrested on suspicion of stealing the Zabo family's magic ship. Camille tried to object, but they did not stop. Just before they were about to catch him, Dino and Enrico came and stopped them. Not only that, but the guildmaster also got involved and stated that they had no evidence of this accusation yet, and he wouldn't let any of them do this on their own. While Wataru was trying to process what was happening, they left and Wataru went inside. In the guildmaster's room, the guildmaster explained to him. He said that a merchant Zabo claimed that his ship was a stolen heirloom from the Zabo family and asked if he recognized him. Wataru responded that he didn't recall seeing him before and wondered if he was sure he wasn't mistaking him for someone else. There was no way he could have stolen it either, because the ship he had right now was a Japanese ship made by a Japanese manufacturer, which was something that wasn't even from this world. Enrico stated that Zabo was one of the merchants who came asking for a contract. That was the guildmaster also thinking. He knew Zabo as a small-time scoundrel with a bad reputation. This only meant that he was trying to take away his ship because he refused to sign his contract. He couldn't believe how reckless this man was, but the guildmaster stated that this kind of approach doesn't usually work out anyway. But Zabo had the support of a nobleman called Baron Benvenuto. If this nobleman acts, the officials can't ignore him anymore. When he asked desperately what he should do now, he said that he should give him a trial by fire. With that, he ended up going to trial in another world. When he took a look at the courtroom, he saw Zabo, the judge, and the observers. A man stated that they were going to deliberate on the theft of the magic ship regarding the complaint made by the merchant Zabo. And as the Southern Count was in attendance, any disrespect would not be tolerated. The guy who he thought was the judge, and he wondered if he really was that great of a man. When Wataru was asked if he had anything to say against Zabo's complaint, he said that he did not steal that magic ship because he paid for it properly out of his pocket. Zabo started crying and screaming that he was lying. He added that it was a very precious ship that Baron Benvenuto had embarked on. The man behind him agreed, stating that it was a few years ago, but there was no mistake that the magical ship was Zabo's. He asked if he had any objection to this, so he requested to use this magic boat to prove his stand. The judge approved his request and not it was his turn. Wataru asked Zabo if he could activate this magic ship. Since this was supposed to be his ship, he was supposed to be able to activate it. Zabo was smiling because there were several tricks to activate a magic ship, but all of them included channeling magic into a part of the ship. Wataru permitted him and he started to try activating the ship. However, no matter which point he tried, the ship was not being activated. Wataru was so comfortable because the ship wasn't even a Magi ship. It only operated once a key was inserted. Now it was only up to the Count and the others to give judgment. Zabo tried to defend himself by saying that the ship was broken. But when Wataru came and activated the ship, everyone was surprised. The judge made his decision and found Zabo's claim false. They started scolding Zabo and the Baron for using false accusations to try and steal a magic ship from someone else. They were going to thoroughly question and investigate each of the citizens, so he wouldn't give them any more filthy excuses. Wataru left the court with a big smile on his face. The guildmaster congratulated him. When he said that he was nervous about the Southern Count, the guildmaster admitted that he was the one who asked him to attend. Wataru couldn't believe he was actually in that position. Camilla explained that the Southern Court knew that both Zabo and the Baron were scoundrels and up to no good, so he thought that this trial would be a good time to catch them in action, and therefore punish them. The people were talking about how refreshing that trial was and seemed happy to see Zabo being punished. It was a pain in the butt, but they had won over the bad guys and the case was now closed. Now he could live in peace, he thought. But the town had not changed a bit. Canvassing, bribery, and assaults were still widespread. Wataru spends his life getting away from the town, taking requests, and going to the island. Guido and the rest have started making more rafts too, so now the island looked more and more like a resort. As for his work, he had made friends with other parties besides Girasole. He had also improved his cooking skills. And so, 6 months passed. Somehow, his savings in the guild card rose to 4 white gold coins, 68 white gold coins, and 80 silver coins, which would be 740 million Japanese yen. But to buy the luxury liner, he needs at least 50 billion yen. Even at this rate, it would take more than 50 years to get that much money. In that case, his next goal would be to go to the continent beyond the sea. He decided to buy a new boat and try to trade with the southern continent. Pepper trade was a standard way of making money in a fantasy middle-aged world. By magic ship, it takes a month to bring back pepper from the southern continents. People say it brings in huge profits. Wataru was trying to decide which ship he should use. It was going to be a long trip to the southern continent, so having a large deck would be fine. According to Camille from the Commercial Guild, there were large monsters out in the open sea and only 1 in 30 ships were usually able to return safely from the southern continent. She would rather him not go. His ship was unsinkable and indestructible, so he did not have any worry about this. Guido came and he saw him drinking during the day, so he warned him that he shouldn't do this as he might need to sail a ship for emergencies. Guido said that it was just 1 drink and he wondered what he was doing with the map. He told him that going to the southern continent would be dangerous and asked if he was really that hungry for cash. Wataru said that he just tried his hand at trading since he was able to get his hands on a good magic ship. Besides, he wouldn't have gone if it weren't for the pressure he had been getting from God, but he didn't say this out loud. Guido heard the southern continent was not a safe place, so he needed escorts. Wataru thought about it, but he didn't think Dino and Enrico would like to follow him all the way there. Guido suggested buying some slaves as he didn't have to worry about them betraying him. And there were quite skilled men here. Wataru never thought about buying a slave, but it seemed like a normal thing in this world. When you get transported into another world, he hopes that he will meet his destined one. And it wasn't that the destined one was usually a beautiful woman who protects you or falls in love with you. Guido noticed that he dozed off a bit and told him to not overdo himself and left. Someone called Wataru's name and it was Alicia. They were back and they seemed pretty upset that he was going to the southern continent. Claretta told him to be careful out there. Alicia commented that it was all thanks to him that they had made this island a safe and comfortable place to stay. Irma agreed, adding that because of that, they had got him a little present. They gave him a little slime they found in the forest. Wataru was so happy and excited to have it. His whole mood changed thanks to them and they were glad he liked it. The slime was adorable, and if he had the taming skill, he could probably travel with it. When he said he had got some dried meat for it, the slime talked. It said that it was delicious. Wataru, with a shocked face, told Alicia that the slime had just spoken, but Alicia stated that slimes can't speak. He swore that it spoke and Claretta figured that it could be because of his taming skill. Wataru checked his skills, and it was true. He happily started dancing around as he could bring the slime back to town. Irma stated that if he brought the slime back home, you would need to sign a contract with it. Irma explained that he needed to draw a magic circle, and if they could get the slime in the circle, they could move on to the next step. Wataru asked the slime if he would be willing to make a contract with him and come with him on his travels. He told him to get inside the circle if he wanted to come. Wataru was so nervous because if he did not go in, he would have to send it back to the forest tomorrow. After staring at the slime for a while, the slime spoke and agreed to go with him. They all started clapping for Wataru as he made the contract with his little cute slime. Making the contract was similar to confessing his feelings to someone. As for him, he couldn't believe that there was an element of romance hidden in such a thing like that, and once again he realized how different the other world was. And now, Camille registered his holy slime, which he named Rima, as his subordinate. Since it was a rare species, she warned him to be careful not to get kidnapped. Wataru mentioned that he also wanted to buy a new magic ship, so he wondered if it was possible to withdraw white gold coins without telling her beforehand. Camille said that if his withdrawal was less than 10 white gold coins, they could have it ready the same day. She seemed sad that he was going into the pepper trade. He tried to comfort her, saying that his next ship would be top-notch and there was nothing to worry, but she was still worried. But the way he connected and influenced people was just amazing, and Camille knew he could always buy a ship from a commercial guild. Wataru was impressed by how she knew to include the business in this. She asked if there was anything else she could help with, and Wataru asked her to introduce him to a slave trader. They went to a place that had a quite grand lobby. Rima got into that bag and a man greeted them. He took them to the room where a man named Duccio was there, and he introduced himself as the head of this trading center. He guessed they would be looking for a female slave who could ask as an escort. First things first, he explained about slaves. There were 2 types of slaves. 1, a department slave who had sold him or herself as a form of repaying a debt, and 2, a criminal slave who had committed a felony and lost oneself to slavery. Criminal slaves were usually sent to do forced labor, so what he was looking for was a debt slave. Some rules apply to debt slaves. On the master's side, they were prohibited from killing slaves, forcing slaves to commit violent and disorderly criminal acts, and had to guarantee slaves minimum food, clothing, and shelter. The slaves have to have absolute obedience to their master, and they are not allowed to escape and must maintain strict confidentiality. Last but not least, a contract with a slave was made with the god of commerce. So in the case he breaks the rules, he would be punished by the god. Even this part of trade unexpectedly had something to do with a god's punishment, as Wataru thought. Duchio continued, stating that he could introduce them to the pride of their center, even though it was a bit expensive. Wataru asked what he meant by more expensive, and he said that it was 30 gold coins each. The amount was indeed much, but it wasn't something he couldn't afford at that moment. He requested to meet them. Duchio clapped, and he was sure Wataru would love them both. Two girls came into the room, Inez of the Flame Tiger tribe and Felicia of the Dark Elves. When Duchio asked what he was thinking about the slaves, Wataru's face was already stating that he loved them. Both of them were incredibly beautiful, and thinking about them being his escort sounded amazing. Wataru then noticed that if they were so beautiful and skilled, there should be plenty of people rich enough to pay 30 gold coins for them. Duchio explained that it was because the two of them attracted many buyers that they could choose the most favorable master for themselves. Many customers have tried to negotiate with them and failed. In other words, it was not just about money, he also had to be chosen by them. Duchio continued, stating that negotiations would be done privately with just the three of them, and asked if he would like to take on this challenge. Wataru had nothing to lose, so he agreed. The room was protected by a barrier from the god of commerce, so all conversations within would remain secret. The usual practice was to show his status to each other or appeal to the other party with his financial assets or skills. They were facing each other, and Wataru was thinking about what to do to appeal to them. If it was okay to share his secrets, he thought about saying that he was from another world, but they would probably think he was a weirdo. He decided to introduce himself and asked politely if he could get their name and see their status. Inez was a 19-year-old slave, and she had lots of skills. Felicia was 62, and she was a dark elf. Skill levels, Inez tells him that she was an advanced user, and the barrier magic skill Felicia had was pretty helpful. Wataru asked if it was alright if he asked how they ended up becoming slaves. Inez had gambling debt, and Felicia sold herself to help her people survive after their village was attacked by demi-human hunters. Inez was a former B-rank adventurer, so whenever she racked up some debt she could always pay it off, but she got injured at the Labyrinth City, and because of that, she didn't meet the repayment deadline. She ended up incurring multiple debts, so she sold herself. But she didn't want to quit gambling, so she was looking for a generous and broad-minded master. Also, she only wanted someone who could provide her with tons of good food and lots of fun experiences. She was strong and pretty, but Wataru was a little bit worried about entrusting his life to this person. As for Felicia, she said that she was the daughter of the chief of a village of dark elves living in the forest. The people who attacked her village were the demi-human hunting squad of a human supremacist country. They forcefully enslaved dark elves and take them away to be sold. It seemed they were seen as a beautiful race, so they were often sold for a high sum. Wataru couldn't even believe there was a country out there defending human supremacy. Felicia said that this country was a wonderful place with little discrimination, but it had a vast territory, so it was impossible to protect a tiny village in the forest, which is why Felicia had a request. She asked if he would help her find a safe haven for Fark elves to live peacefully. In return, she promised to offer her everything to him. Wataru thought about it for a second, and even if it was a heavy responsibility, he might come across an uninhabited island where people could live if he searched the open sea. As for Inez, the luxury liner would get her attention. This was all kind of convenient, so he thought about the possibility of the god of creation involved in this. As it took longer for him to answer, Felicia thought he was refusing her, but he said that he might be able to grant both their requests. He decided to show them his unique skill and summoned his ship. They seemed surprised to see a boat, and when Inez was trying to get in, she was stopped by the barrier. Wataru explained that his unique skill allows him to summon a ship that cannot be sunk, destroyed, or invaded, and told them that they could attack it to test it out. Inez used her power to attack the boat, and there wasn't even a scratch. Wataru mentioned that in the near future he was planning to buy a larger ship with the same properties and travel to the southern continent for trade. And while doing business, he mentioned that they could look for uninhabited islands where people could live. And if they did, he would also help transport Felicia's people. At Inez's request, he showed her the luxury liner he was planning to buy, and mentioned that there was a wide variety of food, alcohol, and clothes, and even a casino for her to enjoy. Inez seemed so excited about this. He mentioned that this boat cost 500 platinum coins, so that seemed a lot. Wataru bowed to the girls and stated that his boat was unsinkable and indestructible. But he was extremely weak himself, so he needed someone to protect him, and begged them to consider working under him. The girls took a look at each other for a moment. They both agreed to become his slaves. Wataru expressed his gratitude and then informed Rumi that they had companions. Inez stated that when they were signing the contract, she forgot an important condition: Wataru to take good care of her. Telling this to Wataru while holding hands was not good for Wataru's heart. Meanwhile, poor Felicia was freaking out about her village. For a few weeks after, Inez and Felicia learned how to guard someone in a city while he made preparations for the journey, and finally they were out in the sea. While on the boat, Wataru was showing them the ship he was about to buy, and they were pretty impressed. They were even more impressed when he summoned the new ship, Cruiser. He stated that this boat was called Cruiser to the girls, and Felicia asked if that was the boat's name. This made him think about naming the ship. He thought about something like Toyomaru, buying something more fantasy-like, which would be a lot nicer. After thinking about it for a moment, he decided to call the ship Klugo. Klugo was departing with the destination of the southern continent. In the next chapter, Wataru disguises the ship to make it seem more suitable for that world. Camille was so surprised to see the new ship and commented how unusual it was. It was a type she had never seen before, so she wondered where it was excavated from. Wataru quickly whispered to Inez, asking if magic ships were things you excavate, and she confirmed him. That was new for Wataru. He heard that there were a lot of unknowns regarding magical ships, but he didn't want anybody probing him. He tried to change the subject by asking if the textiles he ordered were ready. With the 1 platinum coin he gave them, they had prepared 80 yards of silk, and those should sell for a high price in the southern continent. Camille also heard that their currency here can be used in the southern continent, but the situation may change according to the political situation. With both money and goods to sell, however, she was sure Wataru would be able to purchase pepper over there. Wataru thanked for her help and support. Camille would love to help him anytime, as he was willing to sell the pepper he brought back to the commercial guild. Wataru promised to do his best, and he saw Enrico and Dino waving at them, wishing them to have safe travel. Wataru thanked them too, and their month-long boat trip began. After buying the cruiser, ship summoning increased to level 3, and his ships now have the autopilot ability. It only worked when the ship was on the water, but it could automatically steer itself to any place he had visited before. The ship could also move even while he was asleep, so traveling between continents would be a breeze. But for the first time, he has to get there himself. With the company of the birds and the dolphins, he continued to sail. The girls were on the deck talking and resting. After a while, they brought him some tea. While drinking their tea, Wataru asked them formally what they were thinking about the ship, and they told him to drop the formal speech. He was having a tough time getting used to them, but tried his best. He asked if they had something they didn't understand about the ship, like how to use the appliances. They actually didn't understand how a lot of things were constructed, but they knew how to use them, so that was enough. They were really surprised at things like the shower and microwave oven. As they also didn't use magic, it was a whole mystery for them. Wataru accidentally mentioned that the ship was from a world without magic, which made them a little confused. He tried to change the subject by asking if they had seen the bedrooms. Felicia and Inez seemed to like the beds. He said that there were 3 bedrooms, so they could each have one for themselves. They seemed a little confused and asked if they weren't sleeping together because they were also his bodyguards, so they thought they would need to protect him even at night. Wataru could not believe he had the chance to sleep with his slaves and used his imagination once again. The image of them sleeping together seemed fantastic, so he agreed to sleep together as a safety. He felt fired up all of a sudden and then noticed something bubbling in the water. They thought it was some kind of gas or the breath of some creature. They were right, a massive sea serpent was about to attack them. However, its head bumped into the barrier when it tried to catch them. Even though they would be fine with the barrier, as the sea serpent was still trying to attack them, they needed to defeat the monster. Inez had never beaten one before, but she decided to give it a go. Felicia brought her wand and handed it to her. She also gave Wataru an arrow. She explained that before they attack, he has to get a hit in as well, and once they defeat the monster, all of them should be able to raise their level. Wataru wanted Rimu to get a hit in as well because he was only level 1, so he would probably level up right away. He used all his power to not miss the shot and successfully hit the monster. Even though it was not a significant attack, it was enough for him to level up. They also let Rimu shoot out one of the nuts he had for a snack, and now it was the girls' turn. First things first, Inez was going to send her strongest magic, and Felicia joined them after. They successfully defeated the monster with a simultaneous attack, and they all leveled up. Wataru was now 25, Rimu was 32, Inez was 7, and Felicia was 5. Felicia mentioned that when their level increases, his body is strengthened and he could also live longer. There was even a legend about a level 700 hero who lived to 1,000. When Wataru said that he didn't know that, the girls looked at each other and then wanted to ask something to him. They asked if he was from another world. Wataru was too stunned to speak for a while. After processing the question, he calmly asked how they knew. They seemed also surprised, but Inez stated that he was not doing the best job of hiding it. She said that he didn't have a lot of general knowledge, and on top of that, he could operate this mysterious ship. That world without magic, he mentioned, was also another world. Wataru didn't see a point in denying but warned them that they should keep it a secret from other people that he was from another world. After telling him to feel free to talk to them about anything, Inez gave a kiss to him and their journey on the sea progressed smoothly for the most part. And on the 25th day, they saw the land. The girls could also see the southern continent. They made it in 25 days, which was 5 days ahead of schedule. Now they planned to approach the shore and look for any human settlements. Inez stopped him and stated that they didn't know the language of the southern continent. Wataru started panicking about this because he had been in the same country all this time. But when Felicia asked what language he spoke in the original world, he remembered that he had a unique skill called language comprehension. After solving this problem, they landed on the field and Felicia cast some barrier magic on him to protect him from one attack, no matter what it was. The place had those small village vibes and it didn't look like they would be able to do business here, but he suggested finding someone and asking them if there was a city nearby. Wataru introduced themselves to the first person they saw in the village and wanted to ask a few questions. After 5 minutes, they found themselves in a house with a bunch of people watching them like they were circus animals. They were in the village chief Glauco's chief. He greeted them and Wataru explained that they had come to the southern continent to trade. He politely asked them to help them find a large port city. Glauco stated that when it came to large port cities, about 10 days away by foot to the west, there was a city called Tivoli. Wataru seemed excited about this information. But Chief Glauco also mentioned that 2 months ago, the king of their nation of Catena passed away, and that had resulted in a succession war. The current situation had yet to escalate to an armed conflict, but it seemed the public order in Tivoli had worsened. He wanted to learn more about what the situation there was like, and he said that in the wake of the king's sudden death, the parties fighting for the throne now were the first and second princes. The first prince's mother was a legal wife who married to the royal family from a foreign country. On the other hand, the second prince's mother was a concubine, but she was a lady from the prime minister's household. The prime minister stated that the first prince was unworthy of succeeding to the throne, and the second king should be the king. And the current situation was a result of that declaration. Both princes were gathering soldiers, and even in Tivoli, the number of mercenaries and other rowdy sorts of people was increasing. He warned him to be very careful if he planned to go there. They went to the ship to discuss what to do, and Wataru asked their opinion. Felicia suggested going to the city with Inez alone to take a look at as they could handle some degree of danger. Inez agreed and added that they had come all the way here so they should give it a go. In the worst-case scenario, they could at least escape using his ship as well. Wataru found this idea pretty cool and agreed that they wouldn't know what it was like until they saw it for themselves. A few days later, they were almost arrived at the city. It was indeed a huge city just like they wanted. They started walking around in the streets and it seemed more peaceful than Wataru thought. A bunch of men suddenly started to talk to Inez and Felicia and wanted to have fun with them. Wataru got so nervous and stated that those two were his escorts, so he refused. The man said that he wasn't asking him, and the girls asked if they should drive them away. Wataru permitted them and they took 2 of them without even using magic. The rest didn't even dare to fight them after seeing Felicia's magic and started running away to see the guards. This looked like it was about to be troublesome. They ran away too. After escaping until they stopped following them, Inez asked what to do as there were a lot of ruffians there. The stalls were still operating, so they should be able to buy pepper. Camille mentioned that there was a guild on that continent as well, so he decided to visit them first. He asked one of the sellers about the directions, but the man refused to give any directions for free, so he gave him a coin. He accepted it even though it was foreign coins and told them that the commercial guild was through that underground passage over there. After getting the directions, they started walking, but there was also a fee to pass a road. Paying the fee, they entered the passage, and now there were lots of people who were trying to sell them some products like lamp for 10 copper coins or a guide for 50 copper coins, and Wataru declined everyone and started running away. Felicia wanted to at least listen to them, but Inez told her that in these cases if you buy one thing, you would need to buy everything they sell. After a while, they managed to get out of the passage. A little girl approached and offered a rose to Felicia, and Felicia accepted it without even thinking, so this cost them 10 copper coins. In the end, they managed to reach the commercial guild 2 hours later. He asked to speak with a representative, and hearing that they were from the northern continent, the man brought them to a separate room. The vice manager of the guild, Mia, greeted them. Wataru was charmed by her beauty. Mia asked if he came for pepper, and he confirmed her. He asked if it was possible to do business with the current situation in the city, and May explained that the feudal lord here was part of the first prince's faction and was gathering soldiers. It was only a matter of time before it became an armed conflict, but she said that rest was assured and buying pepper was extremely worth his money right now. She told him very happily that they were in the middle of a big bargain sale for pepper, and in preparation for a possible civil war, the nobles were eager to convert their pepper into war funds. She also mentioned that it was half the usual price. Wataru was pleased by this but still wondered what was with this sales pitch. Inez asked if that was okay and Wataru said that they could buy their pepper. May asked what his budget was, and he said that he had 2 platinum coins and he had also brought spider silk along with him, so he would like to sell that as well. May was thrilled by this and stated that there was truly a man blessed with good fortune. After all, if the war had already begun, they wouldn't be able to sell such luxury items, but right now, their guild could still afford to purchase these from him. However, they can't give him a price above the market rate, so she asked if that was right, and Wataru agreed. She was even happier to hear that, and wanted to confirm the amount of spider silk he had brought tomorrow. She asked if he had decided on which inn to stay, and wanted to introduce him to the inn that their guild manages. She kept offering him lots of things like clothes and a tour guide while walking them to the door and promised to see them tomorrow before shutting the door on them. They all seemed a little bit confused. Inez couldn't believe the deal was wrapped up just like that. Felicia commented on the business skills this city's people had. Wataru tried to change the topic and mentioned how she told them to go to sightseeing and recommended a shop. While they were talking about that, a man fell in front of them, and 2 ugly men once again seemed interested in Inez and Felicia. Wataru didn't know how many days of this he could endure people just casually harassing them like that. But all of this for the sake of Pepper, so he knew he had to endure. In the next chapter, Wataru woke up with Inez's feet in his face and realized that they were in the southern continent. They ate a delicious breakfast. They already had a taste last night, but the inn's food was truly delicious. Every dish made great use of spices, just what they would expect from the land of pepper. He apologized to Rumi for making him wait in the bag, so he gave him some to eat. Felicia asked what his plan for the day was, and he said that they would head to the commercial guild in the afternoon and have them purchase the spider silk he brought, and they might not have much time for sightseeing. The girls felt bad as they were interrupted so many times yesterday. The main reason they kept getting disturbed was because they were both so beautiful. Wataru stated that with the civil unrest going on, he wanted to leave this country once they finished their business immediately, but he also wanted to buy some food supplies for their journey back and get some souvenirs for everyone back in the southern city. He was counting on Inez and Felicia for escort duties. Inez asked what souvenirs he was going to buy, and he was planning to buy some liquor for the guildmaster and wondered what souvenirs women would like. While he was talking, a woman came and gave them fruit juice. She was also surprised that they were all wearing foreign clothing. They decided to change their clothes to more proper ones and both looked so cute. Felicia asked Wataru if it was really alright to buy these for them, and Wataru said that they were second-hand, so it was better to wear them. Inez expressed her love towards the fabric as there was some kind of thread woven in that sparkles in the light. Wataru thought about bringing this fabric back as a souvenir, and asked how much it was. The fabric was 5 silver coins, which meant 50,000 yen, but Wataru couldn't help but buy one when he thought about Camille's face. They then bought some liquor and ate good food. While walking around, Wataru asked if Felicia wanted something, and she said that she was more than happy with those clothes. Inez noticed that they were selling the fabric that they thought earlier, and it was only 5,000 yen for one roll. He also noticed that the liquor here was half the price he bought it at. Inez suggested he haggle. He was going to buy a lot of pepper, so he needed a hard bargain. She said that they just have to get the guild to buy their spider silk at a high price too. Since she can't speak their language, Wataru needs to do his best. They rented a donkey for 50 copper coins and went to the guild. May welcomed him and asked if he had brought the spider silk. Wataru showed the silk and they went inside. She apologized for keeping him waiting and stated that they had inspected the spider silk and they were of excellent quality. She said that their guild was willing to buy them for 5 platinum coins. The spider silk only cost him 1 platinum coin, so it was a good price. May then mentioned that if he sell it directly to stores, he may be able to get a better price. He could even increase his profit by 1 platinum coin. Wataru was more than okay with this idea, but he could feel Inez's glare to negotiate. 100 million was huge, but he didn't know any stores to sell directly to, and if he did a bad job, he might even get scammed again. In that case, the guild was more trustworthy. Considering the political unrest, he wanted to finish his business quickly, but 1 platinum coin was too much. May said that if he was willing to sell his spider silk to them, they would give him a further 5% off the pepper he bought, and some spices as a souvenir. Wataru thought about it while the girls seemed nervous if he would make the right decision, and they were relieved when he chose to go with May. They went outside after selling the silks. For now, Wataru was able to buy 2 platinum coins worth of pepper, and also requested to be paid for the spider silk and pepper. But it would take some time to prepare that amount, so they were going to deliver the goods at a later date. In the end, he was not able to haggle over the price. Inez was okay if he was satisfied and asked if he was fine. Wataru was okay with all these because in the end, they should be able to make a huge profit. It was a huge quantity, so he borrowed their storehouse. He suggested slowly loading the pepper onto the rubber raft. Suddenly, the little girl from yesterday grabbed Felicia's dress and tried to sell flowers for 30 copper coins. But this time Felicia was able to refuse her. The girl's mom came and thanked Wataru, saying that he saved them. They were planning to escape from the civil unrest here and return to their hometown, but they didn't have any money. When Wataru translated what she said to the girls, Inez felt bad about how everything she heard was about money ever since they arrived there. The girl and the mother left there, but Felicia wanted to buy a flower. She apologized for asking this, but she really wanted to help them return to their homeland. Wataru understood her, as she had been worried about her hometown too, so he gave her the money. Inez commented about how he was being too soft on Felicia, but Wataru claimed that he bought her the liquor she wanted. With the good feeling he got from making a good purchase, Wataru used his skill and returned the goods. With that, the loading of 7 platinum coins worth of pepper was done. They had used all their money, so it was time to head back to the Klugo. He wanted to explore this continent a bit more, but it would be bad if they got caught up in a civil war. With that, they were going to head back to the southern city, but at the same time, they were going to look for an island that the Dark Elves could migrate to for Felicia. In the next scene, they were on the ship, and Inez asked if she could go take a shower. Even though Wataru was okay with it, Felicia thought it would be improper to use the shower before Wataru. Doing the least expected thing, Inez asked if he would want to go in together, making his nose bleed. After the bath, Wataru wanted to review their plans from now on. Just like he said before they left Tivoli, they were going to be heading back to the southern city now, while also searching for Felicia's wish for an island suitable for immigration. Felicia was really worried about demi-human hunters, so she wanted to be on an island that was located away from trade routes. Wataru agreed and decided to go back the way they came, but made a huge detour instead. Besides that, they were going to monitor their food situation on board and search for as long as they could manage. Then if they found an island, they were going to check if it was inhabitable and if there were any monsters or animals on it. Now that they made their plans, Inez brought the alcohol and they toast to finding an island. They continued to look for an island while fighting with monsters and trying to learn to cook. One day Wataru asked Inez how much longer their food would last them, and she said that it was about half a month. This meant that they should not go out any further than this. The open sea was even emptier than she thought, and she suggested returning to the southern city first. Wataru agreed, but he was not happy about the situation. Just as he was feeling down, Felicia called their name and informed them that she could see an island. They approached the island, but it was a little small for people to live on. There was another similar-looking islet over there. Wataru decided to search around this area for a while, as there might be a larger island nearby. He was not familiar with the topic himself, but he believed that islands were formed from things like volcanic activity or earthquakes that happen at the bottom of the sea. So in a single area, they might find multiple accompanying islands that are connected to each other. Based on their food supply, their time limit was 1 week, so they were going to try looking around the area. While looking around, the rain started, so they took shelter inside. Felicia brought some tea for them. Since it was raining, looking for an island plan was postponed until it stopped. Felicia seemed depressed and anxious about the possibility of rain continuing for an entire week, but Inez and Wataru tried to comfort her that it would stop soon. They went to sleep, and when Felicia woke up, she saw that the rain was letting up. More than that, Inez told her to come, and they showed the large island in front of them. Going around the island, they found a river and decided to go upstream. After they landed, they started walking around to check the island. After a while, they saw the view through the hill, and it was truly amazing. They checked out the island for the past 2 days, and Wataru asked what Felicia thought about the island. Felicia couldn't feel any traces of humans, and there was even a river, forest, and grassy plains, so this island was ideal for dark elves. He asked if she would be okay with the goblins in the forest, and she believed the villagers would be able to deal with them. She mentioned that their people had always carved their villages from the forest, so they were used to the monsters. Inez mentioned that there were wild animals too, so hunting looked possible. In that case, Felicia asked for Wataru's help in immigrating the dark elves to this island. Wataru said that he would help in any way he could. Seeing Felicia tearing up once again, Wataru kindly asked her to not cry. The next day came, and it was time to head back to the southern city. Wataru noticed he obtained autopilot ability, so he wanted to try it out for the first time. He designated his destination on the map, and the ship started moving on its way. When he went inside, the girls weren't expecting him as the boat was moving, but he explained that the vessel was moving using the autopilot skill. It would steer the ship for him if he had been to the destination before. Felicia and Inez were so interested in this skill. Thanks to this skill, they were going to reach the southern city in about 2 days. Felicia said that on the way back to the southern city, they would be passing by a spot very close to her village, so she wanted to stop by for a visit if possible. Wataru found it a good idea because it was also a chance for them to discuss moving to the island. He asked if it was alright if they visited without warning. It wasn't a problem, even though their village was closed off to the outside because her father was the village chief. and she was sure he would be delighted. Wataru wondered if bringing a bottle of liquor would be right, but Felicia reminded him that she was just a slave after all. That was the moment when Wataru realized that he was just a man who was keeping his daughter as a slave. He could almost see the image when her father found out this. While he was feeling overwhelmed by this, Inez decided to head out onto the deck with Rimu and left them alone. Felicia held Wataru's hand and stated that she could now thank him enough for helping them find a safe place to live. And just like she said when they were finalizing their contract, she intended to offer him every part of herself. Her face was getting red, and as a thank you, she closed her eyes and started leaning towards Wataru to kiss. Wataru was indeed excited, but thinking about Felicia's father scolding him, he had to stop her. He stated that she really made him happy, but they have not properly moved all the elves to the island yet, and it would be better to focus on this immigration for now. Inez was at the door teasing him for acting all cool. 2 days later, they arrived at Felicia's village. There were lots of burnt houses. Inez couldn't see anyone in there and asked Felicia. Felicia looked above and told them to not move a muscle until she said it was right. Inez and Wataru were shocked about her attitude but listened to her. Not a second later, a bunch of people with masks and weapons started surrounding them. One of them asked Felicia what lies under the blue stone, and when she responded with the fairy's egg, the whole atmosphere changed, and they took off their masks, revealing their happy face to see Felicia. Everyone started coming out of their houses to greet Felicia, and she told Wataru and Inez that it was okay to move now. As he was expecting, the dark elves all looked absolutely stunning. Felicia's father came and asked about her guests. He introduced himself as the village chief Federico to Wataru, and Wataru introduced himself back. He invited them inside and they started talking about immigration. Wataru mentioned that Felicia also approved of this island they had discovered. Federico questioned Wataru's will go out of his way to ferry them to this island despite knowing nothing about them. Wataru got pretty nervous and started sweating, but he was shocked to see Federico tear up thinking how good a person he was. That was like a dream for him, and he didn't know how to thank him. He said that this proposition was like a dream come true, but he had to discuss this with the village before deciding, and asked if he could have some time to consult with the rest. Wataru was totally okay with that, as he also needs to head back to the southern city first. They shook hands and Felicia's mother came asking if they had finished their discussion. Her name was Cecilia, and she informed them that she was going to prepare some food for them, if they would like to stay over at their village today, and left the room. Felicia seemed like she really missed her mother, but couldn't go to see her as she had the duty to guard Wataru. But Wataru told her that he got Inez with him, so it was okay for her to go to her mother's side. Felicia thanked them and excused herself to see her mother. Federico was happy to see his daughter well. Wataru thanked Federico for believing him because he thought he would be suspicious of him. He said that he could tell by looking at Felicia that he wasn't a bad person. For the sake of the village, Federico ended up sacrificing his daughter, and normally he would be ashamed to even meet her. He thanked him for reuniting his daughter with the village and for letting him see her smiling face again. They were really getting along as a family. Wataru just hoped that the move to the island go well and everyone could live peacefully from now on. The next day, they were ready to go, and they thanked Federico for his hospitality. While walking back to the ship, Felicia thanked Wataru for this favor, and he was also glad that she was happy. Wataru then wondered about Inez's family, and mentioned that if she wanted to see them, they could go visit her hometown. Inez was totally against this idea because if she saw them, she would have to explain how she became a slave to them, which she was not intending to do. Now that they had accomplished all their goals for this trip, it was time to go back. From there, the southern city was about 2 days away. In the meantime, they transferred all the pepper that was loaded on rubber boats aboard to Klugo's deck. Unfortunately, Klugo's deck could only hold half of what they had bought, leaving 20 bags of pepper in the rubber boat. If they brought back more than what the deck could carry, his unique skill might get found out, so they decided to sell the rest another time. After that, he prepared the souvenirs he would give out to everyone back in the southern city. He was so excited to see everyone, especially the women. 2 days passed and Guido mentioned to Camille that he just met him at the harbor and he returned from the southern continent. Camille went outside and saw Wataru in the port. She called his name and expressed her happiness about him making it back safely. Wataru was so happy to see Camille he could not be happier to have her come back to the harbor even if it was her job. He asked if they could move their pepper to the guild right away and Camille approved. Camille took everyone to transport. Camille then checked the pepper, and their quality was impeccable. She congratulated him on his successful trading trip. She said that everything comes down to 72 platinum coins and asked if that would be acceptable. Wataru was okay with the price and wanted her to set aside 50 of them to deposit into his guild account. He also showed me the souvenir he brought. Camille got shy and asked if the present was expensive, but Wataru told her to not worry about it as she had helped him out with many things. She politely thanked him and promised to treasure it. He then showed the liquor he brought to the guildmaster. Camille said that she would hold on to it for him as he was currently on duty. Camille then asked about the southern continent. Wataru responded that he only visited the Catania kingdom, but the king had suddenly passed away and caused a succession war. The next time he goes there may be a full-blown civil war. She was surprised that he was planning to go to the southern continent again, even though he already made a fortune. That was true, but he wanted to travel and visit all sorts of places and promised to be extremely careful. Camille accepted that he wouldn't stop, so she gave up. When they went outside, Inez mentioned how shocked Camille was when he said he would go again. But since he can't tell her his skills, it can't be helped. But when she looked at him with those eyes, Wataru's heart started to beat faster. Felicia asked what he was planning to do, and he said that there were some people he wanted to pass souvenirs to and they should be staying at the luxury inn nearby. They went to the luxury inn and every member of the jelly party was there, happy to see Wataru. Wataru was once again impressed by their beauty. He noticed that Kara was not here, and the girls explained that she was laid up in bed and asked for his help. Kara came with a sad face and jumped onto Wataru saying that she missed him. Apparently she wanted to eat carriage so badly and ended up getting a fever. Dorothea confirmed what she said and mentioned that every time they go to the Southeast Island she keeps saying that she wants to eat carriage. And then after 3 days she came up with a fever. Claretta asked if he would be willing to teach them how to make garage. Wataru was happy to do it. Inez and Felicia were curious about lots of things such as Wataru's cooking skills and what was carriage. Wataru had an idea and suggested holding a dinner party as he made the food. With his cooking, he wanted to be sure to give those lovely ladies plenty of service. In the next scene, Wataru goes to the bazaar to buy the ingredients. Felicia wondered what kind of dish he was planning to make, and he said that he would be making carriage, which meant he needed to buy some chicken. While thinking, he saw some oysters and immediately bought them to make fried oysters. He figured from Inez's reaction that fried oysters weren't common in this world. He said that once you coat them in butter and fry them, they become crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside. He also wanted some tartar sauce on them, which means he needed mayonnaise first, but there was nothing in this world that looked like mayonnaise, so he decided to make mayonnaise. However, he didn't know if this world's eggs were safe to eat. He asked Inez if they ate the eggs raw, but unfortunately, she said that they would get a stomachache if they did that. But as Felicia recalled, she had heard of casting purification magic on food when eating it raw. The priestess that was part of Girasoli may be able to use it, which was Claretta. Kara and Claretta came and she seemed so eager to learn how to cook. They were going to cook on the patio of the inn where they were staying. Wataru considered today as a date as they were on their day off. Claretta mentioned that Alicia and the others would meet up with them sometime in the afternoon. Now it was time to split the work and get cooking. Claretta and Wataru were going to make the carriage. Inez was in charge of the vegetable soup, and Felicia was handling shucking the oysters and deshelling the prawns. While Kara was watching them cook, Wataru wanted her to help with something. Even though she said she couldn't cook, Wataru said that he only wanted her to crush the bread into tiny pieces. That seemed like something she could do, so she accepted. Now everyone was busy with something, and Wataru went to ask Claretta if she could use purification magic. Luckily she could, and he asked if she could cast it on the egg. She happily did it and asked what he was going to make with that egg. He said that he was going to make mayonnaise, which no one knew about. First things first, he added salt, pepper, and juice to the yolk of the egg they just purified, then whisked. Once everything had mixed, he added oil a little bit at a time and continued whisking. As he didn't have a blender, he had to whisk it with his all power. Everyone seemed to have a blank look on their face, but he was sure they would be amazed by the time they tasted it. After making it, everyone tasted it, and he was right, they all loved it. Claretta wanted to learn how to make this mayonnaise, and when he was about to tell her how to do it, Rimu wanted to learn too. When Wataru asked what she could do, she said magic. Wataru told Claretta that Rimu could also use magic, and he guessed that he was talking about purification magic, but still wanted her to check it. He led him on the table and Rimu started using purification magic. Claretta confirmed that he really can use this magic, which made Wataru so happy. After a while all the foods were ready, and the members of Girasoli were gathered. The meal was a huge success, and everyone in Girasoli as well as Inez and Felicia were incredibly satisfied 6 days after their fun party. They paid a visit to the Dark Elf village once again. However, there was a problem. A man named Romano was trying to attack Wataru for helping the villagers migrate and claimed that he was fooling them. Romano was acting like a lunatic, telling Wataru to release Felicia immediately, while Felicia was literally guarding Wataru. Wataru asked Felicia what they should do and worried that the villagers might be against migrating. Felicia told him to wait until they heard from her father about the situation. They went to Federico's home and he seemed sick of Romano. Romano told Federico that he shouldn't listen to that villain Wataru, and claimed that he was forcing Felicia to be a slave against her will. Felicia tried to object to him, but he was yelling that they would be held captive and raised like livestock by Wataru. Federico stated that apart from Romano, the entire village had agreed to migrate, and the decision had been made. He ordered him to be quiet and behave, but he kept saying that Wataru was brainwashing the village chief. While Romano was telling his theories loudly, a man hit him in the head and introduced himself as his father, and also apologized on behalf of his son. He grabbed and started dragging him while telling the others to ignore him and proceed with the plan to migrate. Federico apologized to him and stated that he was just being selfish. The demi-human hunters already knew of their village and there weren't many of them left, so they had no choice but to migrate. Wataru suggested discussing the schedule and other details. They sat down, and as far as Wataru heard, this village had 35 residents. His ship was not able to ferry in one go, so he was going to do it in 2 trips. The trip was going to take about 2 days to reach the island. Federico would handle the splitting job. Wataru also bought tents so they could stay in, half a year's worth of food, and some useful-looking tools for cultivating the land as well. Also, he suggested towing the buildings that could be disassembled to the island using his ship. Federico once again teared up and wanted to name the village after him for going this far for them. The rest of the villagers were briefed on the same day, and preparations to migrate started immediately. He disguised the interior of the Klugo with his skill. Felicia comforted him that most of the villagers had never ridden a magic ship before, so it shouldn't be a problem. Inez was upset that they wouldn't be able to use microwave, fridge, or shower, but it was only for a little while. 5 days later, Wataru and half of the villagers were ready to go. There were 20 people including them, and it was pretty cramped. Romano's father tied up his own son and greeted Wataru like he wasn't doing something crazy. He promised to make sure he wouldn't impede their journey. Now it was time to set sail. The villagers seemed happy, even though some of them were not used to the ship and got sick a little bit. At night, they all slept as they were pretty tired. On day 2 at the sea, Wataru seemed tired even though he was only pretending to steer the boat. He noticed that Romano was not at the front deck. When he went inside, everyone seemed concerned, and his father was trying to convince her not to do something stupid. He was still refusing to believe Wataru's sincerity, and told Wataru to turn this ship around at once or he would throw himself overboard. Wataru was so sick of him that he wanted him to just jump in. Felicia tried to stop Romano too, but he was not listening to her either. As he offered to escape with Felicia, Inez and Wataru were 100% sure he had a crush on her. Just before Romano turned to the ocean and was about to jump, the sea serpent came and started attacking. Romano's father told everyone to go inside and tried to grab Inez and Felicia to go inside too. Romano was still blaming Wataru even for this monster attack, but before the monster could do any damage to him, it bumped into the barrier. Wataru told everyone that the ship could take any type of attack without being destroyed. After this incident, they arrived at the island. Everyone was so happy to be in this area, and Felicia thanked Wataru once again. Wataru and Inez approached Romano and claimed that he was in love with Felicia. Romano's face turned red and tried to object, but Wataru said that he figured it out. Wataru had a proposal to him. He said that he would back away if he confessed to Felicia and if she accepted his confession. He was not a villain after all. Inez felt weird seeing Wataru saying stuff that some alpha male would say, and concerned about the possibility of Felicia accepting his confession. However, Wataru already knew that she would turn him down. Romano returned with a smile on his face as if he wasn't just rejected. A lot happened, but the first wave of villagers began setting up a temporary camp at the top of a hill, and they left to ferry the remaining villagers over. 6 days later, the migration was finished with a big success. All villagers had arrived at the island, thus marking the beginning of the new Dark Elf village. At the Dark Elves' new village, the elves had already started building houses, and it seemed like everything was going smoothly. Felicia's father apologized to Wataru for having him drop by again and again, but it wasn't a problem for Wataru. He said that he had brought the vegetable seeds and the cart he asked for, and asked if there was anything else he could help with. Federico said they could now handle the rest by themselves and thanked him. Wataru asked Felicia's opinion, saying that he wanted to go back to trading, but if they did that, they wouldn't be able to come back for a few months. Felicia seemed okay with that, and mentioned what Federico said. She also thinks that the villagers will handle the rest, and it is time for them to leave the island for the time being. And with that, they went for their second round of pepper trading. Using the autopilot function, it only took them 10 days to reach Tivoli again. Luckily, there wasn't a war yet, and they were able to stock up on 65 platinum coins worth of pepper in no time. When they were on their way home, Felicia noticed that Wataru was a little off. He said that he was doing some calculations and he got a little greedy and bought a ton this time. Right now, they had 515 rubber boats worth of pepper stored. Inez asked if they could buy the luxury liner with that, but he reminded her that the luxury liner costs 500 platinum coins. However, he realized that including his savings, he had 1854 platinum coins in total. Inez was thrilled, and she couldn't believe she would finally get her all-you-can-play, all-you-can-eat life. While they were dreaming about the jacuzzi baths and glittering dresses, Felicia reminded them that they could get this amount of money only if they sold all their pepper, which was the main problem in this situation. Wataru could sell only 20 rubber boats worth of pepper to the Commerce Guild each time. Any more than that would go beyond the Klugo's capacity, which would end up attracting suspicion. But selling off 515 boats worth of pepper would mean making 26 trips to the southern continent and back. And if they do that, he would end up drawing attention because people would suspect he knew a surefire way to reach the southern continent. Wataru suggested getting more cruisers and assembling a fleet, bringing back a huge amount of pepper to not look strange. But if he was in possession of more than one ship of this size, Felicia didn't think the country nobles would stay silent. Wataru was displeased by how this world works. He had the goods to get the money he needed, but no way to exchange them. Inez had an idea. She suggested selling pepper to the people other than the Commerce Guild. He would only stand out if he sold everything at one spot, but he could just sell pepper at other places besides the southern city. He could tell the merchants of other countries that he got his pepper from the southern city and wouldn't stand out while making money. Felicia and Wataru loved this idea. He was also happy that they would be able to go traveling, so it could be fun too. Now that they got their plan, it was time to head back to the southern city. When they arrived at the Commerce Guild, Camille stated that the pepper he had brought back this time was in impeccable condition as well, and offered him 72 platinum coins for his stock. Wataru accepted her offer and asked for 30 platinum coins in cash. Camille was concerned that he was going back to trade again, but he explained that he wanted to explore the other countries on this continent, so he wanted to use that as travel funds. He asked if she had any recommendations for him. Camille recommended to him the religious state Palermo's Grand Cathedral in the eastern part of the continent. She hadn't seen it herself, but it was said to be a stunning building. Wataru wasn't really interested in religious places, so he asked if it would be okay to go there. Camille was told it was a peaceful and safe country and the people embraced diversity. After thanking her for her recommendation, they left the guild, and Inez seemed pretty excited for their trip to Palermo. Wataru asked if they had any other places they wanted to visit, but they both were excited about seeing the Grand Cathedral. Before starting their preparations, Wataru said that there were some people he needed to see first to pass them some souvenirs from the south again, and it was obvious that he was talking about Girasoli. The Girasol team seemed to love the gift he brought. Irma asked him to pick something that looked good on her in a flirty way, but Wataru didn't have much fashion sense. Alessia commented on how he went to the southern continent a second time, and that it was a wonderful thing. She asked if he was planning to continue with the pepper trade from now on, and Wataru responded that they planned to travel around the continent while selling pepper in the countries they visited, and their first stop was Palermo. Claretta was shocked when she heard he was going to Palermo. Alicia explained that Claretta always wanted to visit Palermo, and that's why she was so excited. Wataru wondered why a party like them wouldn't be able to visit there whenever they wanted to, but Claretta explained that several neighboring countries around Palermo were human supremacists, and beast folk like them would not be welcomed. Wataru was familiar with the human supremacists because of Felicia's situation. When he was about to ask about their sea route, Claretta asked if he could bring them along with him. However, Wataru hasn't thought that far ahead yet. Irma stated that there might be inspections even if they travel by the sea. Claretta apologized and wished them a good trip. At night on the boat, Wataru was thinking about Claretta. He regrets not inviting her to come along, but unlike the time with the Dark Elves, this might be a long trip, and his skill would definitely be found out. Nonetheless, he was still thinking about buying a new ship for them to travel together. He suddenly noticed something on the stats screen. It was a man-made floating island that came with a jacuzzi and 6 bedrooms for only 4 platinum coins. Wataru dreamed about being with Girasoli on this ship and made his decision. He was going to buy a new ship and invite Girasoli on a trip. Palermo was about 17 days away by magic boat to the east. Their first stop will be the port town Bergamo, the capital where the Grand Cathedral was located, and it was 3 days by carriage from there. If he was inviting Girasoli for a trip that long, he had to put his all into being a good host. He even thought about making some pudding and finding something that everyone could play like Reversi. And the most important thing was the swimsuits to enjoy the jacuzzi. He asked Felicia and Inez where to find swimsuits, but they didn't even know what that meant. He explained what it was, but they were still confused because why would they need clothes while being in the water? Wataru realized that this world didn't have swimsuits. He would be branded a pervert if he made them himself and gave them to Girasoli, and he didn't even know if they would wear them if they had never seen one before. He decided to discuss this with a tailor. He thought about what else he needed and remembered that they would be camping out while traveling by carriage. In that case, the little hut he made to place in his boat while he was in the western city would be very safe. He made his to-do list and started with a carpenter's workshop to see Domino first. When he brought his list to Domino, Domino didn't seem to understand why he wanted 64 circular stones painted white and black. It was not part of a shipwright's work but would cost 61 silver coins, including the small huts. Wataru thanked him, and he was going to come by to pick it all up in 3 days. The next stop was to the tailor. She stated that they accept custom orders to make any type of clothing he would like. Wataru explained that the fabric should be soft to the touch and water-resistant, and for its design he wanted it like to be a gown. The tailor gave something to Inez and asked if he wanted something like that, and Wataru confirmed her. Compared to a swimsuit, the level of exposure ended up decreasing, but if it was something like this, everyone at Girasoli should be willing to wear it. A few days later, Claretta thanked Wataru for inviting them on this trip, and she was so excited. Wataru invited them inside, telling them not to stand at a ceremony like that. The party went inside and they really liked it. He told them that before departing he had one important request. He confessed that there was a secret regarding him and he wanted to show them rather than just explain. He summoned a boat to show his power. The girls were surprised and confused. He explained that he had a unique skill called ship summoning, and the Klugo was also something summoned from his skill. The first verbal reaction was from Alicia. She found it incredible. Irma figured that the boat he used to ferry them to the southeastern island was also from his skill. Wataru mentioned that this ship still held some secrets, but he was going to explain those as they traveled. He informed them that things would get troublesome if the public found out about this skill, so he asked them to keep this a secret, which was his condition. They were shocked, but still promised to keep his secret. Now that they settled this, it was time to go. While going, the girls were trying to figure out the things on the ship while also having fun. Except Wataru. He forgot that he couldn't use autopilot for places he was going to for the first time, but he was still looking forward to the evening. After a while, Wataru came and asked if everyone had familiarized themselves with Klugo. Alicia thanked him for steering the ship and stated that Inez and Felicia had taught them a lot. In that case, it was time to introduce them to the special ship where they would be staying the night. The girls were once again surprised and excited about this new ship. Without waiting any longer, Wataru summoned the new ship he bought. The ship was so big that trees were growing. It was so incredible that even Wataru was amazed. Inez hugged Wataru and asked what kind of ship was. He thought of a name for it and named the ship SS Hideaway. When they went inside the ship, he explained that he tried to make it look like a wooden ship, but this might just be a really weird ship no matter what. But as Felicia said, it should still stand out less than how it was before. The SS Hideaway was ultimately just a floating island, so it couldn't move, but as a resting place, it was second to none. They looked around inside and it was pretty luxurious. The ship was so magnificent that it was like a mansion. Inez seemed to love the big bedroom. Wataru saw the photos, but rather than a ship, it was like a specially designed vacation home. Wataru went to Alicia and told them to use the remaining 4 bedrooms as they liked. Alicia wanted to pay for ferrying them, but he immediately rejected it. They already agreed that they would guard him in exchange. She promised to guard him once they reached Palermo. They had had a look at most of the ship's facilities, but Wataru wanted to ask if there was anything caught in their eye. Dorothea wondered about the bath-like fixture on the deck of the second floor, which is what he had been waiting for. After 5 minutes, Wataru was in a jacuzzi with 6 extremely beautiful women. He wasn't even sure if this was a dream or not. His nose could not stand any second seeing Claretta's bountiful chest being so close to him. Alicia thought it was strange to wear clothes and enter, but she did find it fun. Wataru was also pleased by his swimsuit choice. Felicia warned him after noticing how he was looking at them. Wataru decided to go get some drinks for everyone and told Inez and Felicia to enter the jacuzzi. After actually managing to go on a trip with them, Wataru didn't want them to hate him for ogling too much. But even though there were so many women here, he hadn't triggered any romance flags with a single one of them. He knew they were way out of his league, but he just wanted a sliver of hope. He talked a lot with Alicia, and he didn't think she disliked him either, but it was probably because she was the leader of Girasoli. He had cooked together with Claretta and they were pretty close. However, they only talk about recipes and meal planning like they were housewives. Irma was the only one who didn't get mad and played along with his lewd way, but he was sure she was doing that on purpose to toy with him. It was a thorny road to romance. Alicia thanked him for everything and went to bed. Dorothea and Marina came and they had something to ask Wataru. They wanted to sleep together. While Wataru was trying to process what they just said, they stated that they meant Rumi. They brought Rumi and went to their bedrooms while Wataru was standing there sweating in jealousy. In the morning, Felicia and Inez brought tea to him while he was steering the ship. He decided to take a break while drinking the tea. Felicia felt somehow bad that he was the only one who had to work, but he comforted her saying that steering a ship wasn't that difficult. Inez wanted him to teach them how to steer a ship so that they could take turns and rest. This sounded like a good idea. Meanwhile, the Girasoli party was checking the game Wataru brought and suddenly the ship started moving a little unstable. Dorothea asked what was going on, and Alicia thought this could be an emergency. However, it was just Inez using the ship. Alicia asked what happened and Wataru explained that he was teaching how to steer the ship. Alicia found this incredibly fun and wanted to steer it too. While Alicia was steering the ship, she used it so professionally that she could even shake off a shark. Now that Wataru had some free time, he decided to make some snacks. Claretta came and wanted to help him. While they were cooking, Dorothea and Irma were playing the game. When the snacks were done, Inez and Alicia came to eat. Wataru noticed that Alicia, Inez, Felicia, and Marina had broken the ice between them and wanted to join. Kara was so amazed by the pudding he just made. Right now, the one with the highest affection for him was definitely Kara. It wasn't what he wanted, but it was nice in its own way. In the next scene, we see them fighting with the sea monsters. Wataru wondered what they were, and Dorothea explained that they were mermen. They weren't strong, but they were troublesome because they attacked in a pack. But they were perfect for practicing magic, as Claretta stated. Rimmu agreed and told Wataru that he learned magic. Rimmu used the holy spear and killed one of the mermens. Wataru was amazed and thanked Claretta for teaching Rimmu magic. Inez was already bored of mermen and wanted to steer the ship. Their journey was going smoothly. It had been 18 days since they left the southern city. They should be reaching the port town of Bergamo soon, and then they were going to travel by carriage. They saw land not so long later and arrived in the port town Bergamo. The townspeople seemed interested in them as they were all beautiful ladies. Wataru wanted to erase his presence as much as possible so he doesn't become anyone's target. Alicia was relieved to be back on land again, and she asked where they were heading first. Their first stop was the Commercial Guild. They arrived at the Commercial Guild, and while Wataru was asking the receptionist where they could purchase food supplies, everyone including the receptionist couldn't keep their eyes on the ladies. The same thing happened at the inn they were going to stay. At the Filippo company recommended by the guild, an old man asked them what they were looking for, but he asked the girls while Wataru was the one who had business. They sat down and the man stated that the pepper he brought was an exceptional quality. It was so fresh that he felt like he was eating it on the southern continent itself. Of course, he didn't know about Wataru's cheat skill. He asked how much it would cost to purchase this pepper. Wataru wasn't expecting this at all. Camille purchased a cartload for 3 platinum coins, so he thought about going with 4 platinum coins but wasn't sure about it. The shop owner seemed to notice this and asked about it. Wataru stated that he wasn't good at negotiation. He suggested he name his price, and if that was higher than what he was thinking of, he would sell it to him. The owner asked if he had only one chance, and he confirmed him. If he offers more than 3 platinum and 60 gold coins, he would sell it. Pepper of such high quality wasn't something he would see very often, so he offered 4 platinum and 50 gold coins. Wataru immediately accepted this offer as it was higher than he thought. When they went outside, Alicia praised his negotiation. They finished their business very quickly, so he asked them if they should head for the capital tomorrow. Claretta seemed so excited that she would finally see the Grand Cathedral. Irma jokingly stated that she was being too much, but it was a big deal for Claretta. The beauty of the massive cathedral made of stone was a given, but it was also said that divine idols bestowed upon them from the god of creation himself were enshrined within the cathedral. Seeing the creation of God's name draws his attention. He was getting a bad feeling about this but didn't say anything. Dorothea asked if they should go make the arrangements for a carriage and he accepted. While they were walking, the god of creation was watching them and apparently, he was waiting for Wataru. In the next chapter, they were in the carriage headed to the capital of Palermo, Barletta. Inez informed Wataru that the capital should be coming into view soon. He told her to stop the carriage so that he could put the rubber raft away. Alicia had always taken it for granted that carriages would hurt their bottom, but thanks to the rubber raft, it was very comfortable. Now that everything was settled, they continued and arrived at Barletta. It was indeed an impressive sight, and not only Wataru, but the Girasol was amazed. Claretta couldn't help but tear up a little after seeing how magnificent this city was. She started walking, but Alicia told her that they had to return to the carriage first. After a while, they entered the Grand Cathedral. There were divine idols that Claretta said were bestowed by the god of creation himself. If the god of creation really made them himself, he totally exaggerated what he looked like as he thought. He wanted to ask about the other statues too, but it didn't look like a good time as Claretta was in a whole other mood. Alicia suggested praying and Wataru accepted. They all got on their knees and started praying. While Wataru was praying for the skills he got from the god of creation, he was once again summoned to the holy place. But this time it wasn't the god of creation in front of him, it was a beautiful woman, and she also seemed surprised. Wataru was thinking about how pretty that god was while she called for the god of creation, complaining. Apparently they were still in the middle of a conversation, so she asked him to not admit people into God's realm. The god of creation didn't seem bothered by Wataru, and stated that her lectures were so long and he was actually surprised that the god of light could lecture him, as he was the god of creation. He then asked Wataru how he had been as if she wasn't there. The god of light was so beautiful that she was shining. The god of creation stated that he called him over here because he had been working hard and he wanted to praise him. Light God warned him to keep his interference with the mortal world to a minimum. When he said he didn't interfere with anything, she reminded him that the 2 slaves Wataru had were both moved to the slave traders, and that was his doing. Wataru also thought about this. The creation god told Wataru that the god of light was so petty and asked if he had any complaints. He also said that the party he was with, Girasole, he said that after something troublesome was going to happen to them, he should use his ship summoning to help them out. If he does, those other gods should bow down before him too. As Wataru stressed out about this troublesome thing, he was about to say what was going to happen, but the light god stopped him from saying that any more than that was not allowed. Wataru was really curious, but it didn't look like he would be able to ask any further. He asked if that troublesome incident was something that could be avoided if they acted now, or if it would be better if they hurried back to the southern city. The light god stated that it was not something that could be changed by his actions. She couldn't say anything more, but he was free to choose if he would like to involve himself in this. She told him to not be swayed by the god of creation's words and to decide for himself. Wataru congratulated them. Dorothea stated that now they wanted a familiar like Rimu-chan. She asked if it would be alright if they went searching for slimes in the surrounding area, after Wataru finished his business negotiations. Wataru was scared because it sounded perfect for troublesome things to happen, but even if he declined, he couldn't avoid trouble. 2 days later, they were walking around in a very vague intel. It was said that slimes that could use magic reside in places with strong natural energy like a volcano for fire magic. And they were at the exact spot where they were right now, the Hellwind Cave. Apparently, this cave was like a complex maze, and part of it was completely blocked by water. That is why it's hardly been explored at all. Wataru was not pleased with his situation as it was dark. The wind was strong and he was tired. Alicia said that with Wataru's summoning skill, they might be able to pass through the passages that were flooded. They seemed so excited to explore this cave. Their excitement was the reason why Wataru couldn't say no to anything they asked. Dorothea reminded them that their goal was to find slimes, and they continued their way into the cave. A bat monster came and they defeated it immediately without any trouble. Meanwhile, a slime was watching them. They walked around in the cave, used their boat to continue their way, and fought lots of monsters. When they took a break, Kara asked for pudding. Dorothea wasn't sure if this cave was a mistake because there weren't even any normal slimes here. Wataru said that he saw slimes quite frequently in the forests, but he didn't know they also reside in caves. Dorothea explained that before meeting Rimu, she never took any notice of slimes, so she had no idea. She assumed that if it was a place where monsters appear, then they should also be there, but she seemed like she was wrong. Alicia suggested searching the nearby forest because if they go deeper into the cave, it would take a long time to get out. Marina stated that she wanted a slime who could use wind magic as her partner, so she was going to search here. Suddenly, the wind got pretty strong and Wataru wondered where it was coming from. When he took a look at his left, he saw a little slime. He immediately told the other, but the slime went deeper into the passage behind a rock. Alicia and Marina went after the slime and Wataru warned them to approach slowly. When they went down, they saw the slime and Alicia also noticed a light shining down. They all went there, and it was a pretty place inside the cave. Wataru saw the slime on the water and summoned his boat to catch the slime. However, it was so small that they lost it. Wataru offered to cross over to the other side and they all seemed happy. Dorothea was pretty sure they were the first people to ever set foot there. It didn't seem like there were any monsters either. Wataru took out Rimu from his bag and warned him to not go off too far. Rimu seemed like he knew where he was going. Suddenly, Irma called everyone to come near her. She saw dragon scales. Wataru had never seen one before, but it was pretty big. Irma noticed that this was a mythical dragon. Claretta could feel traces of divine power from the residual magic in this scale. Wataru asked if they were that rare, and Inez explained that dragons and mythical dragons were completely different beings. There were mythical dragons of light, darkness, earth, and fire, and only one of each element existed at any one time as far as they knew. They possess intelligence and are referred to as the messengers of the gods. Alicia was so happy that they came across something like that. She wanted to look around to see if there was any more. Wataru was worried that this was connected to what the god of creation mentioned about upcoming trouble, but they mentioned that it wasn't related to their actions. The girls forgot about the slime because they found 9 scales, 3 claws and 1 tooth. Wataru asked how much would it be worth if they sold those, and Claretta stated that it was impossible to subjugate a mythical dragon to begin with. The only items like this that exist were those bestowed upon heroes in the past, now kept by a handful of countries. It had never been sold on the market because it was impossible to put a price on it. Kara is now scared to bring it back, but Alicia stated that all those materials would make the ultimate weapons. Inez suggested storing everything away using Wataru's skill and they kept his place a secret. Claretta stated that they can't keep everything here a secret. She found several rare medicinal plants growing there, so they had to ask the country to protect these plants and this cave. If they find other mythical dragon materials while inspecting the plants, they would suspect them of secretly keeping some for themselves, but they wanted to turn those into weapons. While they were arguing about what to do, Wataru wished they would never find them. An hour later, they finally decided to say that they found 2 scales and rare medicinal plants growing there, and they would present the Grand Cathedral with one and sell the other through a guild they could, and half of the sale sum would go to Wataru. Wataru was the one who would hold the remaining materials, so they were willing to give him 2. Wataru asked if he should summon the Klugo, and they all took a rest first, and they agreed. Meanwhile, a slime was watching them and seemed sad about how lonely it was. Marina heard it, and when she turned back, the slime jumped into her arms. Since there weren't any slimes here, this one was so alone. Marina introduced herself and asked if it wanted to come along with her to go adventuring in all sorts of places together. The slime accepted her offer, and with that, Marina formed a familiar contract with the slime and named it Fu. At the capital of Palermo, there was a man named Enzo, the vice guildmaster in the Commerce Guild. Every day he makes his rounds to ensure that the guild is running smoothly. He intervenes with people who are not in line. He seemed quite sick of those people who can't follow the rules. One of his workers came and informed him that a person wanted to see him. It was Wataru. He said that they had an extremely important matter to report, so they would like to speak directly with the guildmaster. Enzo asked what was his business. He warned him that it would lead to a huge panic, so they can't just discuss this in the middle of the hall. But Enzo didn't take his words seriously, because there were always people like him who inflated and exaggerated all matters. Wataru started begging him, saying that the staff at the Adventurers Guild said the same thing, and it turned into a big argument. Alicia corrected him by saying that they weren't arguing, they were just being rude. Enzo warned them that if this was a joke, there would be consequences, and led them to the guildmaster's room. Kara and Felicia brought some things while Enzo was watching them curiously. They even shut the door to his face, which was a huge disrespect to the vice guildmaster. He had no interest in doing business with a group like that, but did not interfere with them. After a while, the guildmaster called Enzo and wanted him to take a look at something. It was the Starseeker grass, which was a precious medicinal herb, and a dragon scale. The guildmaster added that the scale was from a mythical dragon, which surprised Enzo so much. He said that the party were travelers from the Latina kingdom, and they discovered these materials while exploring Hellwind Cave. Enzo said that if that was a mythical dragon scale, then it would be highly coveted by other countries. If information on this were to leak, it would cause a huge commotion. The guildmaster mentioned that they found 2 scales, and they wanted to donate one to the Grand Cathedral, and they would like to sell the other one through them. They got so happy that they forgot about the professional relationship between them and started jumping around as they got a huge job where they would be dealing with countries. After realizing that they lost their composure, they started planning. First of all, they must invite the cardinal down to the guild to ascertain whether this was an authentic mythical dragon scale. Then they must report the information about these herbs to the medical guild. The guild master wanted Enzo to take care of these 2 matters. Enzo immediately accepted these requests, but all the carriages were in use when he started running to ensure completing both tasks. He went to the medical guild and asked to see the guildmaster at once. He was well acquainted with the guildmaster here, so this should go smoothly. The guildmaster came, and Enzo wanted him to send everyone out of the room immediately to discuss a matter of importance. After discussing everything, the medical guildmaster promised to go to the commercial guild right away. Next was the Grand Cathedral. The guardian at the gate stated that the cardinal was a busy man, and that if he didn't have an appointment, he could not let him through. He tried to say that it was urgent, but the man stated that it was really problematic of him to try ignoring regulations as the vice guild master. Furthermore, if it really was an emergency, he believed that the guildmaster himself would come and want to discuss this instead of him. He wanted to know about the details of his business to decide if it was an urgent matter, but Enzo stated that he would only discuss this matter with the cardinal in person. In that case, he asked him to leave, but he refused. Hearing his voice, people started to look at them, so he should be careful to not draw attention. The guardian stated that no matter how much he tried, it would be pointless. He also told him that he might take him seriously if he shaved his mustache on his face. Enzo couldn't believe he was judging him based on his appearance. After a while, we see Enzo talking with the cardinal. The cardinal stated that he would head to the commercial guild after attending something. He also asked about his mustache, which was half missing on his face. As he couldn't tell the truth, Enzo responded that it was for several reasons that he shaved it off. 2 weeks later, the townspeople were excited to see the mythical dragon's scale. Felicia informed Wataru that they had come, and he looked from the window. It was Girasole making an amazing entrance. Inez wanted Wataru to join them too, but Wataru couldn't sit there with them. The guildmaster also seemed quite impressed with what Enzo had done for the past 2 days. He also noticed that he changed his image a little. Apparently the girls loved this look on Enzo, but he really pissed off the guildmaster unintentionally. With that, their business in Palermo was finished and Wataru was already thinking about where to go next. It had been a week since Girasole had their parade. They had become the stars of Barletta, which made it extremely uncomfortable to keep staying there, so they decided to return to the southern city, thinking that the faster they had the mythical dragon scale taken off their hands, the better. They agreed to sell it to the Barletta Commercial Guild for 200 platinum coins. Alicia brought Wataru's share, which was 100 platinum coins. Wataru thought that was how a ridiculous sum of 10 billion yen came into his possession. Wataru wanted to buy a luxury liner, but it cost 50 billion, so he still couldn't afford it even with that much money. While Wataru was thinking about what to do with that much money, Irma and Kara came out from the shower and thanked Wataru. Irma said it had been a while, so the shower made them feel good. Even though Wataru just said, "You're welcome," out loud, he hadn't seen the sight of beautiful women just out of the shower in a while and thanked them secretly. Irma went to the other girls and asked where Alicia and the rest of them were. Dorothea said they were still steering the boat. Then Dorothea went to meet with Marina's new companion, Fu. She said leaving Marina aside, Fu could play with Rimu and her. She was trying to let him spell out her name. Meanwhile, Wataru was watching them and thought Fu was going to be stolen away from Marina. Kara told Wataru that she was hungry and asked him what they were going to do about dinner. He suggested trying to make croquettes. Claretta seemed excited to help cook. The girls were going to boil the potatoes until they were soft. Claretta could help to finely chop the onions, and Wataru asked Kara if he could get the bread into tiny pieces like the last time. Kara told him to leave it to her. Wataru thought Kara said she was bad at cooking, but she looked so happy when she was able to help. Meanwhile, Alicia and Inez came and asked them what they were cooking. Wataru welcomed them and told them the dinner would be ready soon. Felicia immediately went to Wataru and sincerely apologized to him for making him prepare the meal while she was playing and having fun even though she was the slave. Wataru told her not to worry about it and told her that he was bored anyway, and thanked her. Marina saw Fu and Dorothea, afraid that Fu had gotten attached to Dorothea. She went and hugged Fu and told him that she was going to be with him the whole day tomorrow. Dinner was ready and everyone ate heartily. It was their first meal on the ship in a while. Wataru thought it really felt like home. The croquettes were delicious. The outside was light and crispy while the potato inside was fluffy. Speaking of which, Wataru used to eat the croquette set meal a lot in Japan. There was a really good diner in his neighborhood. In the meantime, Wataru was trying not to think of rice, but when Inez talked about Worcestershire sauce, Wataru couldn't hold back anymore and suddenly screamed that he wanted to eat rice. Wataru kind of regretted that he screamed like that and thought it was a rather embarrassing side of him. Even though they would be able to eat all sorts of food if Wataru kept saving up for the luxury liner, he lost control a little. He said he was actually able to buy a different boat with the money they just got. He said that one was called a ferry, and there were apparently a variety of shops and restaurants inside, along with more than 30 guest rooms. Felicia found it enormous. Inez asked if he could buy that now. Inez said if he was going to buy it using the money from the mythical dragon scale, it would be fine. She said that was a special one-time thing, so he was not delaying his original plan for the luxury liner. Felicia said it was his money, so she wanted Wataru to use the money as he desired. He said he could not buy the luxury liner yet anyway, and he would not regret buying the ferry. He said if he was going to think of it as a little reward, then it was okay to buy. He seemed convinced and then told them to buy it. The next morning, Alessia and Dorothea went to check on Wataru and asked if he was alright after last night. He thanked them for their concern. Alicia asked him what he was doing and he said he was buying a new ship. They were surprised that he was buying a new ship, just inserting all platinum coins. Wataru was so excited and told them when they saw the ship they would be definitely shocked. Everyone seemed really excited and curious about the new ship. When Wataru revealed his new ship with a great windy show, no one could believe its size and believed it looked like a fortress. At the beginning of this chapter, the excitement and admiration of the new ship continued. Nobody was able to hide their shock. The ferry has finally been bought with a capacity of 632 people. Its traits were being unsinkable, indestructible, and denied to the board. Even Wataru was amazed by the size of the ferry. He wondered if ferries were always that big, 192 meters in length. Wataru saw it in the description, but that was more than he imagined, and he said that type of ship was called ferry, and it was a large ship that could transport cargo and people. Nobody could believe that a thing that looked like a fort could move. Wataru said he would name that ship the SS Fortress. Then they all got onto the ship right away and started to tour the inside of the ferry. While Inez was running around with happiness, Wataru realized there was a store that contained cup noodles, tea, canned drinks, snacks, and more. Wataru was about to go crazy with happiness, so Inez tried to demesmerize him. They thought Wataru seemed like he would need some time to compose himself. Wataru bought 1 cup of noodles and said he wondered where the money they paid went. Irma told Wataru that it must have been something incredibly delicious for him to make such a fuss about the noodles. Wataru said it was delicious, of course, but that was something he often ate back in his hometown. Irma thought about Wataru's hometown. Kara approached Wataru while holding some snacks and asked Wataru what they were. He said they were some sweet snacks. Then Felicia approached him and told him that the cloth that she held was so soft and said it was called a face towel that she wanted to buy it. Wataru said there should have been a restaurant, a big bath, and much more on the ship, and wanted everybody to go look for everything. Everyone started to wander around the ship. They saw the bathroom with an extremely comfortable bathtub and a huge kitchen, and everyone looked very happy. Meanwhile, Wataru was in the vapor bath. They celebrated their new ship by drinking. Wataru thanked the god of creation for thinking the ship's amenities included a yukata for everyone. Felicia used the shampoo and told Wataru that her hair became so smooth, then asked him if he would like to use it too. Meanwhile, Wataru was drinking and thought that alcohol was fizzy and tasty. Wataru asked everyone if they were enjoying the SS Fortress and everyone seemed perfectly okay. Irma said everything there was truly like nothing they had ever seen. Irma asked Wataru where he was from while the others tried to stop her from asking personal questions to the master. Irma said it was fine if the master didn't want to say it, but she said she had figured it out. After Wataru thought about it for a while, he admitted that he was from another world. Everybody, especially Kara and Alicia, was shocked to hear that. Wataru wondered if they didn't suspect something. Kara said food from another world was amazing and she said she wanted to go there. Wataru thought Kara could probably make it as one of those big eater celebrities. Alicia said she heard that people from another world were able to receive skills from the god of creation and asked if summoning one of those. Wataru said yes to that question. Claretta asked if it could be that he had met the god of creation, what he was like, and if it was as gallant as the statues in the Grand Cathedral. Wataru said it was pretty much the same. He asked if she could keep it a secret. Alicia said of course and told him that it was a huge shock, but asked him to think about that skill. It made sense. They would protect them. However, Alicia wanted to hear more about his world. It was the right choice to buy the ferry. It looked like the trip back to the southern city was going to be fun. The day after the feast, Wataru woke up and saw Felicia and Inez. They seemed so exhausted, especially Inez, who was lying down and not jumping around like she always did. Wataru figured that they were hungover. Felicia explained that they stayed up with Girasoli after he went to bed until dawn. She tried to get up, but Wataru stopped her, saying that it was okay to just rest for a day. While he was sitting alone, he figured that Felicia had a really good time to get a hangover. If they drank that much, the rest of them were probably still asleep, so he decided to check out his skills. His ship summoning skill leveled up and he got a new skill like autopilot. His new skill was called boarding ticket. With this skill, he could select a ship that he owned and issue a boarding ticket for it with a validity period of his choosing. Ticket holders may board any number of times for as long as their ticket is valid. If he issued one to everyone from Girasoli, then he didn't have to manually approve their boarding every time. He noticed that he could appoint someone as staff and they would be able to work at their appointed workstation. And he also collects money when he issues tickets. The skills he got this time were geared for occasions when he used the ferry for business. He created the free tickets with no expiry date and decided to give them out to everyone. While he was walking to the girls' room, he was thinking about how peaceful the day was. However, after a few minutes he saw Kara and Claretta, and they called him to come quickly in panic. She brought him to the game corner and explained that she wanted the items encased in the box, but couldn't understand how she should pay. Wataru responded that this was a type of game where you insert copper coins in order to use the claw to grab the plushies. He wasn't really good at the game but still wanted to try. The first try was a failure, unfortunately. After that, Claretta got completely hooked on claw machines. After playing the entire day, she ended up getting every type of plushie. The rest of Girasoli woke up past noon. Everyone got used to the ferry in no time. Before they knew it, a week had passed. Wataru noticed that everyone had been eating and drinking too much recently. Before, they only had drinks occasionally, but here they had been drinking every day, so he felt like he should give them a warning. But he didn't want them to hate him after finally getting closer to them. For now, he decided that it was fine just during the time they were aboard the ferry. While thinking about them, he heard something and it was a bunch of monsters. As the rooms were quite far from the ocean's surface, they didn't notice them gathering like that. Dorothea was sure they would follow them until the southern city, so it was better if they took them down first. Alicia agreed, saying that they should ride Klugo and take them down from the outside. Wataru wasn't sure about this idea, but they were surrounded by monsters, so he also thought it was a good plan to steer the boat through that horde. But he warned them to not play around and be careful. However, they were literally ramming into the monsters. Dorothea told Alicia that if she rocked the boat too much, they can't attack. Alicia saw a kraken and decided to go in. Claretta used her holy spear to defeat the monster. After beating up all of them, they returned to the ship. Alicia was having too much fun, but it was a good exercise for them. Kara noticed that she hadn't been moving her body much recently, so her clothes had gotten a little tight. Dorothea also noticed this for herself too, and Alicia felt like her body was a little heavy. Wataru couldn't believe those beautiful ladies were going to become a pudgy party, so he said no to drinking more beers to celebrate their hard work today. They looked at him confused, so he stated that they were all eating and drinking too much, ruining their body with that. Their drinking parties were only held once every 2 days, and after 5 days they switched back to the Klugo and returned from their trip to Palermo. Back in the southern continent, Wataru praised everyone's hard work, and they thanked him for bringing them to the grand cathedral they had always dreamed about. Wataru said that he was planning to go there anyway, so it wasn't a problem. He then remembered something and told Dorothea that if she got any information on slimes, she should let him know and they should go search for them together. He said that he wanted to let more people know about how cute slimes were. Dorothea thanked him and added that she also wanted to hurry up and find her own slime too. After the Girasole party left, Wataru expressed his pleas about this trip because he managed to sell pepper and got closer to Girasole. Now it was time to give out souvenirs like they always do. The first stop was at the Commerce Guild. Camille. She was so happy to see him return safely. Wataru also missed her. She asked how was the Grand Cathedral, and he described that it was a truly splendid one-in-a-lifetime experience, and he had something to give her again. He showed her the dessert he made. He said that when he made it for Girasole, they loved it, so he wanted her to try as well. He didn't buy any souvenirs meant for women this time, but she should like the pudding, as he thought. Camille tasted the dessert, and Wataru got no reaction from her for a moment. She then asked what this food was called in a very strict tone. Wataru said that it was pudding. Her entire mood changed and she offered him to form a contract with the Commerce Guild and spread this recipe throughout the land. He could take home pudding sales from stores that use his recipe. Wataru was confused because this was so simple that everyone could make it at home. But Camille explained that this was even better because then even more stores would be able to make them. She continued, saying that if this recipe catches on, dairy farms would flourish, and the Commercial Guild could get commission fees as well. Wataru realized that he accidentally lit a fire in Camille's merchant's soul. She said that they would make an official contract with the God of Commerce, so there was no need to worry about getting his royalty fee. But Wataru said that this was a dessert from his hometown, so he didn't actually invent it. Camille said that if someone had already registered it, then the contract wouldn't form, and there wouldn't be any fee imposed on those making it at home either. She asked excitedly if he was going to form a contract with them, and he couldn't refuse. He gave her his signature and the pudding recipe. The contract was completed. Wataru told Felicia and Inez about what happened at the Commerce Guild, and they were also impressed by how passionate Camille was about her job. Inez asked where they were going, and he wanted to go see Donino and give him some wine. Donino thanked him for the wine, and he remembered that Wataru asked him to make a toy for him last time. He found it pretty fun once he tried it, and so some of their apprentices wanted to sell it to make a little money. He asked if it would be okay, and Wataru didn't mind it at all. Hearing this, Donino wanted to go to the Commerce Guild and sign a contract. At the Commerce Guild, Camille asked if this was also something from his hometown, and looked at him seriously. Wataru was nervous that she was going to ask him about his hometown and find out he was from another world, but she said that knowledge like this was a resource, so he should not spread it around carelessly. After finishing their business, they went to eat grilled oysters. Wataru got so nervous that he got hungry. Before they started, Wataru showed the thing he brought from the ferry and they started eating. At the inn, Wataru realized that he let his guard down too much lately, even though they should be keeping a low profile. Felicia added that they spend a lot of time on the ship, so it was inevitable. Inez said that he has amazing skills, so he should aim to become a hero, but Wataru can't even fight to save his life. He didn't want them to say that stuff because they might trigger some weird flag. The innkeeper Sarah came and stated that some people wanted to see him in the lobby. Alicia stormed into the room and wanted Wataru to lend them his strength. They were so confused, Dorothea apologized for being so sudden. Alicia explained that if he needed compensation, she would pay him everything she had. Wataru told her to calm down first. Wataru was concerned because this might be the incident that the god of creation mentioned. Dorothea eventually explained that there was a war coming up. The city they were from, Lucca, had been surrounded by the Imperial Army's ships. At Lucca, the Lord was informed that Fort Lughorn had fallen. That meant they couldn't expect reinforcements from the capital. Apparently, the Empire gave up on the Beast Kingdom and targeted Lucca instead. Wataru recalled what the god of creation had said to him. He figured that the god of creation was telling him to go fight in a war. For years, the Empire had fought with its neighboring countries like the Beast Kingdom and Brescia Kingdom. In recent times, they had been fighting with the Beast Kingdom, but they had suddenly switched to invading Lucca. Lucca was one of the Brescia Kingdom's most prosperous cities and was an important trade port. The city should be able to withstand the Empire's attack to some degree. The Girasole team were all born and raised in Lucca. Alicia said that he knew asking him to get involved in a war was a terrible request to be making, but all their friends and family were there, so she had to ask for his help. Felicia and Inez looked concerned. Wataru definitely didn't want to do this. The hero shtick was totally impossible for him, and he had no idea what he should do either. There was no way he could attack other people. The best he could do was maybe use his ship summoning as a wall, and even then, he might not be able to stomach all the killing happening in front of him. In the first place, he was bummed about having his first hero-like event in a war. He was in a big dilemma for sure. However, he knew he couldn't just abandon them when they looked so anxious. He didn't even have the courage to turn them down. In that case, he stated that he was a real scaredy cat, so he couldn't fight, and he also wanted his origins and skills to remain a secret. He said that if that was alright with them, he would help them with defense and escaping. Eventually, they prepared everything for the road and headed to Lucca. A normal magic boat would take about 20 days to get to Lucca. If he set the Kluga to move during the night, they might be able to reach in about 10 days. He was still worried that if some important person noticed him during the war, it was going to spell trouble. Felicia wore the robe Wataru bought before leaving, and he seemed pretty satisfied as he could hide his face with this. On the off chance that they have to show themselves to people, they could pass off as mysterious magicians. He asked Inez how Girasole was looking. She said that they were discussing what to do after they reached Lucca, but getting nowhere. Wataru asked if he could leave the steering to them for a while to check on them. While he was going there, he could hear them arguing. Dorothea was insisting that they shouldn't approach them from the sea, but Alicia was thinking about the possibility that the city had already been breached by soldiers. Kara said that the Empire subscribes to human supremacy, so the beast folk wouldn't be spared. Marina stated that if they charge using SS Fortress, they might be able to break through the blockade. Wataru did not want this, but Alicia already seemed like she decided. Irma reminded her that he didn't know Wataru would agree to a strategy that stood out so much. And at the end of the day, they had to see what the situation in Lucca was like before deciding. With her words, a silence followed them. Wataru already understood that they were completely deadlocked even without talking to them. They were all anxious, so it was natural. He wished to have a ship for them to use. If the port was surrounded, a smaller boat that could get close without being noticed was better. He looked at the ships and found a speedboat for 81 gold coins. Its capacity was 9 people, and top speed was 11 knots per hour. That speed was scary, but with this, they might be able to get past the enemy fleet and other magic ships, and it didn't stand out as much as the ferry. Also, it might be able to lift everyone's spirits before reaching Lucca. He gathered everyone on the deck and summoned the speed ship that he just bought. Everyone seemed surprised, so he explained that this boat was by far the fastest of all the boats and ships so far. He was about to explain what would happen if they mastered using this boat, but Alicia interrupted and stated that they could sink the enemy fleet's ships. That was not what he thought, so Wataru looked at her in shock. In the next scene, Wataru stated that the boat was the speedster. He suggested steering, and Marina, Irma, and Alicia went to the boat. While steering the boat, Irma killed the monsters they had seen, and Alicia noticed that the accuracy of her attacks had improved a lot, and Marina seemed to get used to the boat. Wataru was shocked to see them practicing their attacks the moment they started steering. He wasn't sure if they still remembered that he agreed to defend Lucca and provide an escape route. Felicia asked if he needed to sit on the speedster with them, but he had enough. When he looked at them, they all seemed pretty serious. They had already mastered using the speedboat, so he started considering buying the second one. Inez asked if his funds for the luxury liner would be alright if he kept buying ships. Wataru wasn't worried about that because he was getting a reward from Girasole, which should cover the costs. Inez started teasing him, saying that he could have asked her to marry him as Alicia was willing to do anything. Wataru imagined Alicia in a wedding dress smiling at him, but then realized that it would be like he was forcing her to offer herself to him. He defended himself, saying that it would make him the bad guy, but Inez was sure he wasn't bold enough. He still wished to touch her a little bit though. In the days that followed, they headed for Lucca using the speedsters as much as possible while practicing as well. At night or when they took a break, they traveled using the At the start of the journey, Girasole was so fixated on the war that they had no appetite. But fortunately, they calmed down and regained their composure. But they weren't all normal as expected. After 8 days at sea, the Klugo arrived in Lucca's water earlier than expected. Wataru warned Alicia that if they kept going, the Empire's fleet might spot them, so Alicia decided to wait until night and then do some scouting. At night, Marina, Inez, and Alicia took the little boat, and when they noticed the lights, they stopped. What they saw was the Imperial ships having the port surrounded. But they were all on the south side of the port, which meant the Empire hadn't been able to make landfall yet. Lucca was still safe. They went back to the Klugo, and the rest of the Girasole came and asked about the situation in Lucca with a concern. After giving them the news, they all seemed pretty happy to hear that the city hadn't been captured yet. For now, that was a huge relief. Irma mentioned that they had managed to avoid the worst-case scenario, but as they had said, the Empire had the port completely surrounded. Alicia continued, saying that from their scouting mission, they managed to confirm the number of magic ships they had. 1 large ship, 2 medium-sized ships, and 1 small ship. Aside from that, they also had a large fleet of sailing ships and galleys. The magic ships were constantly patrolling the area, and they had a lot of soldiers keeping watch. They wanted to evacuate their family, but it seemed like it would be difficult to infiltrate the city. So Wataru asked what they were planning to do. Marina said that a frontal assault with the SS Fortress still seemed the best way to do this. They asked about Dorothea's opinion, and she said that rather than forcing their way through with a frontal assault, they should sink the enemy ships first. No one was expecting something like that from her, but she seemed pretty determined about this plan. She said that the moment the Empire sees Wataru's ship, they would be on extremely high alert. Before that, they should cull their fleet first. Alicia agreed with Dorothea and added that if they could thin the enemy fleet, they could open up the port, which eventually made evacuation and defense easier. Wataru was listening to them with a concerned face and asked if they could really sink the enemy ships. Camille said the magic ships might have a barrier around them, but they could attack the sail ships and galleys with their magic or skills, and with Wataru's ships it was possible to sink them. Irma agreed, saying that it was a logical plan. Wataru saw everyone raring to go, and even though he didn't want to get embroiled in a war, he knew he had to be firm here. Alessia asked Wataru if he was alright with this plan, and he wanted to say something. He said that he promised to help them with defense and evacuation, and the strategy this time was beneficial to both of those, so he was on board. But if they thinned out the enemy fleet, the Lord would definitely take notice of him, and he can't have them all continuing to make use of his skills for the sake of Luca like that. He warned them to avoid any battles from now on. The girls realized what they were asking for and apologized to Wataru, but he reminded them that he agreed with their strategy. The Lord was going to notice of him no matter what, so aiming to thin out their fleet was the best. They quickly decided on their plan of attack, and tomorrow at the dead of night, they were going to split up into 3 speedboats. Using the Speedo's unsinkable and indestructible properties, each team would attack an enemy ship. After blowing a hole in their hull, move on to the next ship and rinse and repeat. It was decided that he would remain on standby in the Klugo. The first Speedo was Felicia and Kara, the second was Claretta and Alicia, and the last one was Dorothea, Irma, and Marina. And Klugo team was Inez and Wataru. When they were all set, Alicia reminded them to aim for the large ships. Wataru was nervous, but Inez said that it would be strange if they lost while riding one of his ships. Wataru wished them to stay safe, and then they left. The enemy saw the Speedos coming towards them. They were so fast that they couldn't even intercept them before they reached their ships. Their target was the large magic ship, so they started steering there. The soldiers on the ship used their magic to stop them, but it was useless. Alessia made the first attack and Inez heard their sounds. Wataru was so nervous. The ships were unsinkable and indestructible, so they should be fine, but Wataru was worried that they would go on too much of a rampage. In the next chapter, we see Girasoli take down the magic ship even though it took them a while. They then moved to the next one while the soldiers were trying to figure out what was going on. A man asked if it was true that someone was fighting against the Imperial fleet at this very moment. They saw the Empire's magic ship sinking and couldn't believe their eyes. The enemy was firing arrows at them, but they were causing no damage thanks to the barrier. They were in a panic about losing the other magic ship too. Dorothea got one of them and told him to surrender. If he refused, he would be joining this ship at the bottom of the bay. Meanwhile, Wataru was at the Klugo trying to calm down. He wondered how much time had passed. He couldn't believe he was participating in a war. He wondered if the enemy would hold a grudge against him, or if the dead in this world would become zombies or skeletons coming for revenge. Inez saw him trembling in fear, so she decided to bring him a cup of tea. Suddenly, they saw the signal to regroup, which meant it was over. Everyone came back safely, and Alicia informed them that aside from the ship that surrendered, they got rid of all of them, which was a little hard to accept for Wataru. Camille said the magic ships had a barrier and a protection cast on them, but they managed to open up a hole by attacking over and over. The Speedo repelled all of the enemy's counterattacks, so they were very safe. Dorothea continued, saying that the harbor was in a complete mess right now, so it would be better to enter the city after dawn breaks. There were a few soldiers in Lucca that they knew. For now, Marina and she were going to head over to explain the situation. Wataru found her plan adequate, as it was necessary to let them know that they were on their side. When Dorothea mentioned that they might ask about him as well, he told her to say that he was a maid she hired, and that she couldn't say anything about his identity due to their contract. Ship summoning was an amazing skill, and Wataru was really grateful, but it was absolutely broken if he used it for naval warfare. If people found out who he was and what he looked like, all hell would break loose and he wouldn't be able to live in peace. They head into Lucca in the morning, so he decides to conceal his identity with all his might. After that, Alicia and the others took a short rest on the Klugo. Later, Dorothea and Marina returned from explaining the situation to Luca's soldiers. Apparently, Luca's soldiers had lots of questions, but Drodohea managed to convince them of the setting of his being a mage and their contract. He wasn't sure if they would let an unknown mage into the city in the middle of the war, but even if they refused, he could just wait in the ship comfortably. He disguised the ship to change its exterior. There might be people in Luca who recognize his ship, so it was better to change its appearance. Felicia brought their robes for their disguise. Wataru wasn't planning to talk at all in Luca, so those robes were enough for him. Felicia reminded Inez that she should speak more politely to Wataru, or else people would find them suspicious. Alessia called Wataru the Great Mage and asked if they should leave for the city after they finished breakfast. After breakfast, they head to the city. There was ship debris everywhere and there were soldiers all along the ramparts. It looked like they were wary of them, which was expected as Girasole might be the city's savior, but now they were suspicious because of the mysterious mage with them. When they landed, a man named Braun came to guide them. However, he stated that they cannot simply allow someone of unknown identity into the city, so he asked if he would be willing to allow them to attack an observer to the Great Mage. Wataru didn't want someone to follow them, so he asked if they could wait on the ship. Inez asked Alicia, and she stated to Braun that the Great Mage was uncomfortable with an observer, so he decided to wait on his ship. Braun was surprised because of the possible danger of the Empire returning to attack. Alicia looked back at the Wataru and stated that it wouldn't be a problem. They entered the city without Wataru and the girls. It seemed the streets were largely undamaged. The Lord was informed that the members of Girasole had arrived. The Lord's name was Justin D. Luca. He wished to commend them for their brilliant victory against the Imperial fleet. Normally, he would bestow a reward to them all in the audience room, but they were at war now. Alicia thanked for Justin's kind words. Justin asked if they could tell the Great Mage that helped them to win this battle. Alicia wasn't expecting him to ask about Wataru right from the start. She has to make sure she doesn't implicate Wataru in any way, so she stated that they had enlisted the services of the Great Mage to provide assistance in the defense of Luca, or with evacuation should such a situation arise. She apologized and explained that due to the nature of their contract with him, they were unable to tell anything about him. Justin asked what specifically assistance with evacuation entails, but she couldn't answer that question either. Justin then asked if they could expect him to cooperate with Luca. Alicia explained that they can't expect any assistance outside the terms of their contract. After letting his breath out, he told Alicia and the members of Girasole that the Brescia kingdom was currently in danger, and he asked them to convey to the Great Mage that he sought his assistance. He said that Luca was not the only city attacked. The royal capital of the Brescia kingdom was also surrounded by imperial forces. After having their talk with Lord Justin, Alicia and Dorothea prepared to return to the ship and relay the Marquis's message to him, while Claretta, Irma, Kara, and Marina confirmed the safety of their family. Wataru did not hide his surprise and panic about the news. Alicia explained that Fort Lughorn, a vital stronghold that defends the Brescia kingdom from the attacks, fell due to the betrayals of Viscount Dupuy and Viscount Juma. It was chaos everywhere and no reinforcements could come to Luca. Luca was able to hold on, but the Brescia kingdom as a whole was in trouble, which means Luca was also in trouble, so there was nothing more he could do. Alessia stated that Marquis de Luca had two requests. First, defend the port so that it doesn't need to be sealed off again. Second, the procurement of food for citizens of Luca. Wataru didn't seem to have a problem with procuring food, but making sure the port remained functional sounded like it would take a while, and he might get totally dragged into the war, which he wanted to avoid, so he suggested simply evacuating their family and friends. But Alicia and Dorothea were definitely against this option. Wataru figured they would say that, so he explained that if they told him where he could procure the necessary food for the city, he could use the ferry to transport it, so there wasn't a problem here. But when it comes to defending the port, Alicia stated that he could just lend his Shio, and they would fight off any Imperial soldiers. But that would mean Girasole would be taking all the credit in the battle. If she monopolized all the recognition and achievements, the military might hold a grudge against her. As far as possible, he suggested trying to think of a method where the people of Luca were the ones defending the port. Alicia thanked him for his advice and called him a great mage, even though he wasn't comfortable being called like that. Alicia stated that they should get used to calling him mage to not accidentally say his real name outside. Inez teased him to talk in a bossier way. Speaking of which, Dorothea showed the reward for Wataru, which was 10 platinum coins. Wataru didn't expect this amount of coins and asked if it wasn't too much, but Dorothea stated that they declined a court rank and land, so it was an appropriate amount. Suddenly, Wataru had an idea and asked if Marquis was wealthy. He said that he was going to disguise the SS Fortress as a wooden ship and loan it to Luca for a fee. They would get even more suspicious if they saw all the facilities, so he would hide those with his skill, but he wanted to use it for the transportation of food. So he asked for 120 platinum coins. Hearing this much money, the Lord and his servants were shocked. Alicia explained that the great mage said that for that amount, he would loan them a large ship and erect a powerful barrier around it. However, only the great mage could operate the ship. However, even if the ship cannot move, if they park it at the entrance of the port and bring on soldiers and weapons capable of long range at tracks, it would make for a formidable stronghold. The Lord stated that it was a huge amount. Alicia recalled what Wataru said about the price. He wanted to buy a second ferry to transport the food. It was unlikely of him to make such a bold proposition, so Alicia was curious to see Lord's reaction. His servants stated that even if they gave the money to this suspicious mage who wouldn't even reveal his name, he would take it and run away. Lord knew it was possible that would happen, but if Luca fell, any money here would be stolen by the enemy, so he decided to prepare the 120 coins. He told Dumont to prepare the money and the list of food items, and make a short list of soldiers, weapons, and adventurers to bring aboard the Great Mage's ship. When the girls left, the Lord was thinking about his decision. It might have been a mistake to simply hand over the money. But the days of simply enduring while the Empire surrounded them both on land and at sea finally changed, so he had no choice but to make his chances with Girasole and this mage. He must believe that these sleepless nights would finally see an end. The Lord couldn't sleep that night because of his worries, and in the morning someone knocked on his door, informing him that there was a report saying that an enormous ship had appeared at the port entrance. He immediately went to see the ship, and not only Lord Justin but the whole town was there to see it, and they were all amazed by how huge it was. In the next chapter, Wataru came back after parking the SS Fortress at the port. Dorothea brought him some drinks and snacks to take a rest. Wataru thanked her and said he placed the ship near the entrance of the port, but he could still change their position before they left to get food supplies, so he asked her to check with the Marquis. He would create the boarding tickets now. He decided that 500 tickets would be enough for now, and created. As long as someone had one of these tickets, they would be able to board the SS Fortress without being repelled. Also, while he was away, he decided to leave one Speedo here in case of an emergency. These tickets here would allow someone to board the Speedo so that if there was an emergency, they could take their family and flee. After that, Alicia and Wataru talked about their plans from on out. Firstly, he was going to head to the nearby port town Orpheus in the Thessaloniki kingdom to buy food supplies. A store called the Goffredo Company had agreed to prepare the goods. Then Girasole would split into two teams. One would stay in Lucca to keep in contact with the Marquis and defend the city if necessary, while the other would accompany the Great Mage as escort to Orpheus, as well as envoys of the Marquis. Their group was going to depart this evening, so Alicia went to see her family. Inez and Felicia asked what they should do while they waited for everyone to come back. He told them to feel free to do whatever they liked because he was going to think about which ship to buy with the 120 platinum coins he got from the Marquis. Felicia asked if he was planning to buy another ferry, and he said that they were going to be transporting supplies, so a cargo ship would be fine too. But it was more fun when there were shops and restaurants. He realized that if transportation was the goal, it would be okay to just store the supplies on the rubber raft like Pepper last time. If they do that, he could save the 120 platinum coins for the luxury liner. Wataru asked Felicia if he would stand out less if a huge amount of supplies mysteriously came from a small boat with the power of magic. She said that he was already standing out, so they would view his mysterious magic as something dangerous. Inez agreed, saying that the ability to covertly transport a huge amount of supplies was especially attractive during a crisis. Wataru realized what he was thinking and decided to buy a ferry. Felicia reminded him that when they were in these outfits, their name was Shay and Ness. Now it was time to choose the ferry. He saw a ferry having a theater room and remembered that the god of creation also mentioned that he could watch movies and DVDs too. He wondered how everyone would react to watching something on a big screen, so he decided to buy the ferry that had the theater room. In the next scene, Girasole returned from their families and they all seemed so happy. Alessia said that the Marquis was extremely pleased with the SS Fortress and they had already stationed soldiers and supplies on board. Wataru was glad to hear that and then asked how the war was going. There had been no movements from the Empire, but he wondered if they heard anything. Alicia explained that this was what they heard from the captured soldiers, but the Empire wanted to starve out Lucca. The city was an invaluable hub because they wanted to use the port for themselves. She said that they failed to seal off the city so they might try a more forceful approach next. But Lucca was a sturdy city and the preparations to counter any attacks were ready. Now it was time to head for Orpheus. When they were out in the open sea again, Wataru decided to summon the new ship. The Girasole party seemed excited to see his new ship. Seeing everyone so perked up made him happy, and Wataru wanted to get them even more refreshed with a new ship. He summoned the ferry with a 777 people capacity. It was supposed to be slightly bigger than the SS Fortress, but it was so huge he couldn't really tell. Inez thought it was the same size as the fortress, but Wataru defended it and stated that it was true that both ships were similar, but if she looked closely they were completely different, especially the interior. He told her to go in and prepare to be amazed. They went inside. It was so beautiful that it was like a temple. It was indeed different from every ship so far. Inside the newly purchased ferry, Wataru was still in disbelief. Felicia asked what was the name of the ship and he said that he named it the SS Stronghold. He then suggested exploring the interior together with the girls. They started walking around and one of the most amazing things they saw was the bath. Inez wanted to go in together as it had been a while since they took a bath together. He imagined being with Girasole and everyone naked in the bath but ended up bathing alone. After everyone cleaned up, they wore the shirts that were selling in the shops. It was so comfortable that Dorothea and the others also went to buy them. It was kind of refreshing to see them looking like modern-age girls. Inez asked if they were taking a break from the great mage as he wasn't wearing his robe. Wataru confirmed her and decided to make sure they rest up well until Orpheus. After inputting its approximate location, he disguised the exterior of the SS Stronghold to look like a wooden ship, and turned the autopilot function on. They would have a full day off until they reach Orpheus, so he decided to watch a movie together. The girls were exploring the room and Dorothea asked if they could watch plays here. Kara also wondered what a movie was. Wataru told them that they would understand once they saw it, so he told them to take a seat. But come to think of it, he didn't know how to watch movies on this. He just knew that it was possible to watch them but didn't know how. Just as he was thinking about this, a selection menu popped out asking if he wanted to watch a movie. While the girls were talking, he was trying to pick a movie. He thought about a movie that centers around ships but not like Titanic, which was a pretty tragic movie. So he picked Pirates of the Caribbean. When the movie started, the girls were shocked at how the ships on the wall were moving without magic. Wataru stated that he couldn't give them a full explanation, but this was like a play that had been recorded. Kara thought they were ghosts, but Wataru said that they were not real. They started watching the movie with their full attention and Wataru asked Rimu if he was also having fun, which he was. He was relieved that everyone liked the movie he picked, and sat on a massage chair to relax. Eating delicious food and drinking good wine and watching his favorite movies felt pretty good. Getting involved in something huge like a war, and having to pretend to be a mysterious mage was pretty tiring stuff. Suddenly, Rimu wanted to sit on the massage chair too. Giving a slime a massage seemed meaningless, but he decided to do what he wanted. When he turned on the chair, Rimu started moving a little crazy, but apparently he was having fun, so Wataru didn't interrupt. The next day they were about to arrive at Orpheus and Wataru had to go back to bring the Great Mage. Inez asked if it was okay for the advance party to go on the Klugo. Dorothea explained that before they docked the SS Stronghold, she thought it would be better if they spoke to the Lord of Orpheus first. Wataru agreed to her as it would be a huge panic if they saw an unidentified ship appearing. He felt bad for letting his guard down because he forgot that a ferry would stand out too much. And so, 2 hours after Ness and the others left first, they arrived in Orpheus. The city was full of onlookers, but it was normal because of the ferry. Marina called for Great Mage and wanted to guide him to the Goffredo Company. She said that she had already gone ahead and informed the Goffredo Company of his arrival. Wataru asked Dorothea, and she said that she was currently with the Lord of Orpheus. The talks on that end may take a while longer. Wataru then decided to settle the negotiations for the food supplies themselves. The president of the Goffredo Company, Isarko, greeted Wataru. He was nervous but tried his best to calm down. He had no idea what would happen if the fact that he wasn't a mage but just an F-rank merchant got exposed. He said that he wouldn't be revealing his identity and showed the letter and the payment from the Marquis. From Isarko's reaction, Wataru wasn't sure if he was rude or too weird or polite, but apparently he was impressed by his politeness. Isarko stated that he was worried about Luca, but with his power the Empire was repelled, so he would gladly prepare the food supplies. However, it was a large amount of provisions, so it would take about 7 days. It's 20 platinum coins worth of food, so it would be difficult and they might have to go through the Merchant Guild too. But Luca was in a situation where they had no idea when the Empire might attack again, and he was sure everyone wanted to return as soon as possible. They already set up a story that this mage was super arrogant, so he thought it might be okay to be more forceful. He said that 7 days was a problem. Even though the president seemed like a good person, Wataru had to yell at the man to fill his ship to the brim in 3 days. They went back to the Klugo and they were all so tired. Inez praised his acting. Marina asked Dorothea if she was okay, and she said that the Lord of Orpheus was very cooperative in lending Luca support, but he showed an incredible interest in Stronghold, so it was hard to get him to let her leave. Wataru asked if they could hope for military reinforcements from the Thessaloniki kingdom. Dorothea responded that both countries weren't on bad terms, so it was possible, but they just don't know right now. Personally, she was happy if the reinforcements came, but it was probably not so simple from a country's perspective. The next day, the loading of all the procured food supplies began. The workers wanted to see inside, but some of them couldn't enter the ferry as they didn't have any tickets. Wataru was watching them from a distance, and he was amazed at how the ship's parking deck was steadily filling up with supplies. Although the people were shocked at the ferry, they went about their work diligently. At this pace, they might be able to depart in 3 days. That said, he wished he could sell some of his pepper since they were in a new city. Marina came and informed Wataru that there were people who climbed the sides of the ship to come on board. She said that they wanted to search the interior, but they sealed off all the other areas, so they were just hiding on the deck. They weren't repelled by denial to board, which means they were people with tickets brought in to work. Felicia wondered if there were spies for the Empire. Dorothea said it was more likely that they were sent in by the Lord of Orphis, because he was incredibly interested in the Great Mage and the ferry, and it should be easy for him to get a hold of some tickets. Marina asked if they should drive them away, but Wataru responded that no one could be harmed while on board. So there was no danger, but it would be troublesome if they saw anything from his world, so driving away would be the best. On the second day, Marina informed Wataru that the number of trespassers had increased to 10. He only issued 60 tickets and 10 of them were trying to sneak on board. Inez asked what they should do, and he said that it was a lot of work continually chasing them off, so he decided to leave them before now. And after the supplies had been loaded, he would cancel the 60 tickets and they should all be forcefully removed from the ferry. Inez asked what it meant to get forcefully removed, but he didn't know about that either, and he was kind of looking forward to seeing this. On the third day, they had procured all the food supplies, so it was time to head back to Lucca. This also meant that they were going to forcefully remove the stowaways. Marina and Inez seemed so interested in what to do. They had 2 people hiding there as they spoke, and they could see them clearly from his chart. He canceled the tickets and they flew so fast that Wataru wasn't even sure if they were alive. Marina told him that they were alive over there with the others. They managed to remove the stowaways as well as obtain the food supplies and headed back to Lucca. Wataru was trying to set it to autopilot and noticed that the map he had could show the location of the speedo he left at Lucca, and it was moving. It left the harbor and was traveling at max speed. It was probably Alicia's group, which meant the Empire was on the move. If Alicia and the others had been moving in speedos, the Imperial army might have attacked. Wataru stated that with Speedo number 2, they could reach Lucca by today evening and asked whether everyone wanted to go first. Dorothea agreed with Wataru and decided to lend him the Speedo. They traveled to Lucca. A few hours ago, Alicia and the girls were nervous at Lucca as the Imperial army was attacking again. The soldier mentioned 2 large magic ships and 5 medium ships of the Imperial Navy. They also had reports of many other ships en route towards Lucca. The Marquis was in the middle of his war council at this moment, so they had to wait for now. Claretta said that the Imperial Navy would get here before the Great Mage returned. Alicia agreed, saying that the Marquis was preparing to counterattack, but the Empire had more ships at their disposal. She said that they must consider going into battle with the Speedo as well. Clariata whispered to Alicia, asking if she was going to evacuate her family using the ticket the Great Mage gave them. Alicia said that she would save that as her last resort if they got backed into a corner, because if word got out that they had evacuation tickets, it would cause a huge ruckus. For now, she decided to believe and fight for Lucca's protection. Irma reminded her that there were only 3 of them here, and they would have a tougher time sinking the large and medium ships than last time. That was true, so Alicia suggested using the ticket from the Great Mage to get a capable soldier on board the Speedo. But Irma noted that they didn't know how the Great Mage would react if he heard that they used the tickets to bolster their forces. Worst case scenario, he would abandon them and Lux would be done for. Alicia backed up, but they still needed to find something to sink a large magic ship on their own. Claretta told them that they were getting too caught up in sinking ships. She said that once sorcerers and company return, the battle was as good as over, so they just need to stall for time until he gets here. Alicia and Irma seemed surprised as they didn't realize that they just needed to stall, which they could handle that much. A soldier came and informed Alicia that the Marquis was calling her. And back to the present, Alicia, Irma, and Claretta were heading towards the Imperial fleet. She said that they would find them, and then rush in and go after their small magic ships. Irma was still surprised that Marquis had allowed them to act independently and stop enemy forces from reaching Lucca. Claretta concluded that it must be thanks to the Great Mage's backing. Alicia informed them that they were about to encounter the enemy fleet any time now. After a second, the enemy was in sight and there were a lot of them. The enemy soldiers saw them and informed the others that a lone high-speed magic ship was approaching. They were ordered to intercept it. Irma, Alicia, and Claretta attacked them simultaneously with all their might. Alicia noticed that they were far more aggressive this time. Claretta added that they were also in broad daylight and they could see them better. They managed to sink most of the small magic ships and Irma was getting tired. Alicia told them that they just needed to hang in there for a bit longer. Suddenly, a huge force from an unknown source tore the large magic ship in half. The girls retreated in panic, trying to understand what was happening. Irma was sure it came from one of the Imperial large ships. Alicia asked Claretta if it could be light magic, but she said that she had never seen or heard of magic like that. She said that it might be a unique skill, a special ability given to the people by God. Irma was shocked. That was the same as the Great Mage's ship summoning. Alicia realized that up until now, they had no problem with any sort of magic or monster attack, but there was a possibility that this ship would repel unique skills. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.